Another world, Ulfgard. In that world, a person having mastered great magic, he became the Lord of Demons, and now the Demon Lord is winning every battle. He has already defeated almost everyone on this earth. Now he was sitting on a rock and asking, was it really a union of all races? It's too boring. But then he heard something, and lifting his head up, he saw God. He asked if the gods had decided to interfere in the affairs of mortals. It was Seraphim, whose name was Michael. Michael told him that they couldn't let him do whatever he wanted. After that, a bloodbath began between them. The battle between Michael and the Demon Lord lasted 3 days and 3 nights, and as a result of this battle, the Demon Lord emerged victorious. He looked at Michael's corpse and said that he was a little tired. Then he heard something again, and he asked if it was really her, general of the Ishtar demon army. Ishtar said that yes, they had not seen each other for a long time. She approached Michael, and stepping on him with her foot, she scattered his body. The Demon Lord turned to her and asked her to listen. He asked her that why did she appear now. Ishtar said that if you play fair, then no one can beat him. However, he is now very exhausted from the battle with the heavens. She thinks they have a good chance now. When the demon children realized exactly what she had said to him, he laughed and said it was a good answer. Great, just great. Ishtar told him that he didn't change. And I asked him that, by the way, how does he feel now? Although it doesn't matter, because he's going to die now anyway. Yes, just like in the legends, reincarnation, but today they will dissipate. The Demon Lord asked how he was feeling. He feels very well now. Ishtar was confused and asked, what is good? Does he understand exactly what situation he is in now? A whole army has already gathered for Ishtar in order to destroy the Demon Lord. They both looked at each other but didn't say anything. Then the Demon Lord stood in a stupor, and I thought that Ishtar, is she really? Understood. After which Ishtar didn't tell him anything. She ordered her army to get rid of him before he fully recovered. She snapped her fingers, and everyone immediately rushed to kill the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord was very happy and told them that it was great. Let them all fit. But then one of the monsters cut off his hand. During this battle, he lost another leg. And in the end, he was just pelted with spears and swords. And Ishtar, watching this, laughed. She laughed very loudly. The Demon Lord thought, turning to Ishtar, did she really think that he would not be able to be reborn? The Demon Lord was reborn in another world in Tokyo in the 20th century. On that day, dungeons appeared all over the world. Now the army was fighting a huge Cyclops. He had classed that was his danger level. Therefore, the Cyclops was bombed from all sides, but he still remained unharmed. One of the soldiers said that this simply could not be. Then they started bombing him from a tank. Large clouds of dust rose. Someone from the soldier asked what really happened to them. Everyone has already started to rejoice. But the one when the fog cleared and all the dust settled, they saw that there was not a single scratch on this Cyclops. Then people took to their heels. They ran as fast as they could, and as fast as we could. But then one little girl tripped and fell. Cyclops had already swung his axe to kill her, but he was prevented by a man who fearlessly rushed to save a little girl. He repelled the Cyclops' attack and cut him in half. He saved this little girl. The little girl looked at him and, crying, thanked him for saving her. Then people began to come out of their shelters. Someone said he was an S-rank hunter. Armed forces of people are able to restrain ordinary monsters that come out of the dungeon, but they cannot cope with high-ranked demons. Along with the dungeons and demons, there were also people who had special abilities. Such people were called awakened. Many countries have developed a special reward system for clearing dungeons. People created guilds, formed groups, and went to the dungeon. Money, power all belonged to the hunters. But there was also all sorts of gossip around these awakened ones. Paparazzi chased them and tried to find out from them about their personal life. Recently, just the same spade for the man who recently saved a little girl's chair. He was photographed next to some woman. People began to wonder if he really had a mistress. Now a little boy who lived in a semi-abandoned house was watching TV. The news just told about this superhero. The woman said that the world has entered the era of hunters. The boy asked, what is the era of hunters? Of course, this applies to talented people. Hunters can become hereditary. If a child has both parents who are hunters, then his abilities should awaken at the age of 12. His maximum strength and speed of development depend on the rank. This hunter was at level 85. He had a rank of the maximum level this offshooter could reach was 99. And this boy was now level 1, rank F, and the maximum level he could reach was 25. Talent is an insurmountable wall for anyone. Then this boy heard that someone was entering the house. He was very scared and immediately tensed up. A man barged into the house and called the boy. His name was Hiroto. This man came in and immediately started beating him. There are two types of people in their world. These are those who have talent and those who have no talent. Hiroto drew his legs up to him and covering his head with his hands asked the man to stop. Did he beg you to stop hitting him? But the man did not pay any attention to his screams and maliciously asked what was what. What is he saying there? In other words, there are those who use others, and those who are being used. Hiroto began to be called names, saying that he was just a useless freeloader, but he can be very useful to them. If a person is of F rank, then he will be no different from an ordinary person. And no one wants to spend money on raising such people. That is, Hiroto is simply useless. But at that moment, his phone lit up brightly. As a child, when Hiroto was still very young, he lived in an orphanage, and the purpose of the existence of their shelter was to send promising children to the academy for hunters. When Yuzuki passed the test at the age of 12, then she and the weak girl turned into a terrible lioness. Now she was protecting Hiroth when he was in danger, or when he was bullied. The one who was always afraid to fight back before, she began to protect the weak herself. Hiroto was just pathetic. He will forever remember how useless he was. Yuzuki, who had become a genius, was going to go to the Hunter Academy soon. The last time they met, she told Hiroto that she would no longer be able to protect him. Hiroto tried to say something to her, but he couldn't say anything sensible. Yuzuki grabbed him by the shoulders and told him that even weak people are able to fight back, if they use their head. Then she was told that it was time for her to go, after which Yuzuki left. Hiroto thought that she must have said this to him out of pity, although he thinks it was probably out of kindness. It was a direct blow to the heart. Not far from their shelter was a training dungeon for beginners. Before entering the Hunter Academy, everyone must pass this dungeon. Hiroto went there, along with several other small children. They were accompanied by 2 adults. One of them shouted, calling all the children with brats, and said that the reward would be divided 9-to-1 in their favor. Among these children was a support, a rank E, a healer also of rank K accompanied, and their warrior with a sword of the vanguard of rank C, and the warrior with the axe is also a D rank vanguard. The warrior with the sword menacingly said that there were no objections, asking if they understood. Hiroto thought that even here nothing had changed. But then a boy came forward and shouted for them to wait. Everyone stopped and paid attention to him. It was a thief of C rank. He said that the reward is divided according to their abilities. He does not agree to give them almost the entire reward. A warrior approached him with an axe. He stood close to him. Then he punched him in the stomach. He told him that they were hunters of B and C rank, so he should shut up and let him not dare to argue with him anymore. Hiroto wanted to stand up for this boy and shouted at them to stop. But then he remembered the words of Yuzuki, who told him that even weak people are able to fight back if they use their head. Therefore, Hiroto didn't say anything else and thought that he was really pathetic. Then the warrior with the sword could not stand it anymore and tried to stop the warrior with the axe, telling him that he should stop already. A warrior with an axe asked him what he was talking about. The swordsman told his partner that if he beat him even harder and they would be left without a thief. He can finish with it after they pass this dungeon. A warrior with an axe broke out of his strong grip and, calling this boy, said that he would deal with him after the dungeon. After that, everyone went further into the dungeon. After some time, they heard strange sounds. Goblins ran out of one of the passages of the dungeon. The warriors immediately grabbed their weapons, and the children were ready to back them up. The warrior shouted at the support with an axe so that he would not yawn. After a while, they finished off all the goblins. Hiroto and the thief were hiding behind a pile of rocks. Hiroto said that it was better for them, hunters without combat skills, not to get into trouble. And I thought they were pretty good. Talents are not only the highest possible level, but also the speed of skill development. After they all finally dealt with the goblins, these 2 warriors attacked the support. They started scolding him. A warrior with an axe asked him if he could support normally at all. The swordsman told him they were already late. He must pray that the reward will not decrease. Hiroto told this boy whether he knew that he surprised him very much when he objected to these 2, and I asked him to apologize for not helping him. The boy said he couldn't do anything anyway. Even though this is a dungeon for beginners, and they risk their lives, it's unfair when only they will take all the reward. He just really needs money. Hiroto asked what the money was. The guy said that yes, he wants to create his own guild of hunters. Now the Hunters Guild does not look at skills, they are only interested in money. Potions from dungeons, and asked Hiroto if he knew how many lives could be saved with potions. The potions that fall out of the monsters in the dungeon have tremendous healing power. They will be able to cure even the most difficult curable diseases without any problems. Hiroto told this boy that he had heard about them and that they were being sold for fabulous money now. The boy said that with their help he could save his sister, but they had no money, so no one gave them the potion. Ordinary people will never get it, and it seems to him that this is very unfair. Hiroto looked at this boy with admiration and said that it was understandable. Then he asked what his name was. The boy said his name was Akira, Takabana Akira, and I asked him what about his name. Hiroto gave his name. After that, the boys shook hands, and they told each other that it was very nice to meet them. Then a warrior with a sword called out to them. He called the thief and told him to come here. There's a chest in the cave. Akira said okay, now it's his turn. The warriors told him to hurry up. Akira went ahead and told them not to be in such a hurry. It will be very bad if he activates the trap. After that, Wu began to deal with this chest. The warrior with the axe said that you just need to be able to do your job. Support talked with the healer. The support asked if there are dangerous traps in the dungeons and for beginners. While Akira was sorting out the lock on the chest, everyone else decided to take a break. They were pouring water into small mugs. The healer approached Hiroto and handed him a glass. Hiroto thanked her, and I thought that it's not surprising that this dungeon is used, because there is a very low risk for beginners. But then there was an explosion. Everyone looked in the direction of the chest in fright. Akira screamed. He was pierced by several swords and spears, and the dungeon itself cracked. The floor didn't cave in under him. After a while, Hiroto woke up. He asked if it was really a trap. Then he got up and called out to everyone else. Akira's corpse was lying next to him. This was the first time Hiroto saw a dead person. In the dungeons, people can very easily to die. It was the first time Hiroto realized such a simple thing. What could have happened to a weak hunter like him? As soon as he realized this, he was overcome with horror. The warriors paid no attention to Akira. Only Hiroto was sitting and holding his head. He could not come to his senses after what he saw. A warrior with a sword, holding his head, saying that damn, the floor collapsed. The healer came over to see what had happened to Akira. But when she saw what condition he was in, she also fell into a stupor and told him that he was dead. Then she started crying. The warrior with the axe just clicked his teeth in displeasure. He came up and hit the crying boy on the head, so he fell to the floor. The healer immediately stopped crying and looked at them with horror. A warrior with an axe shouted at them to shut up already. The swordsman joined his partner and started shouting for them to stop yelling. He came closer and looked at what had happened to Akira. He made a displeased grimace and said that only one novice died because of his stupidity. They have to think positively. What do they care about him at all? The support together with the healer were horrified and looked at him attentively. The warrior with the axe said that it was true, except for the loss of the opportunity to open the chest. There are no more problems. They should all get up immediately. This will not prevent them in any way in the future. After all, nothing terrible happened. Nothing is shaking now, so they just need to climb up. They have to strengthen his jump with magic, and he will pull them up. They turned to Hiroto and asked him if he had forgotten the rope. Should he get it? As soon as they get up, they will come back. Hiroto took another look at Akira's corpse and said that he understood. After that, they gathered all their things and went on. Support walked ahead of everyone and cried. He asked why there are death traps in the dungeon for beginners. The healer suggested that maybe this is a paradox of the dungeon. The warrior with the axe asked what is the paradox of the dungeon. The swordsman asked what it is when the difficulty of the dungeon changes, isn't it? The healer said that this happens once every few years in random dungeons. The warrior with the axe said that it was clear. The swordsman said that well, apparently it was just an accident. Hiroto looked at them with horror and thought that it was just an accident. One of the warriors said that in any case, I don't care that he died. After all, he was still trash without any skills. Hiroto didn't understand what they were talking about at all. He thought, yes, how can they even? Is Akira's life really? How can they not put a person's life in anything? However, it is already obvious that this was the paradox of the dungeon. Hiroto hurried after them to keep up. He walked beside the healer, the one she stepped on where you stopped. Hiroto looked at her questioningly and asked what happened. The healer shuddered at the question and looked at him with horror. She started crying and said it was like she stepped on something. Then lightning flashed ahead of them, and some monsters began to appear. First there were two paws with claws. The whole group stopped in disbelief, but then a whole pack of wolves appeared. Someone asked if they were really silver wolves. A warrior with a sword started shouting that they didn't even study at the Hunter Academy. How could they cope with them at all? They were D-rank silver wolves. The swordsman said they shouldn't be in this dungeon. They appear only in the far part, which is still closed now. Was it a trap that summons monsters? But why is it even in the dungeon for beginners? The warriors began to confer among themselves. The warrior with the axe asked what they should do now, even if they try to escape. A warrior with a mimic interrupted him and said that yes, they would not be able to escape from the silver wolves. This was the real paradox of the dungeon. Its other name is this rash paradox. As the name suggests, this is a chain of unexplained events that change the dungeon. The swordsman asked his partner what they would do. The warrior with the axe squinted at the small children. and he said he remembered something. After all, silver wolves have one peculiarity. After that, everyone looked at Hiroto. Hiroto stood in a stupor and was terrified. To prevent unforeseen situations, they studied the monsters that can appear in the dungeon for beginners. These wolves have one peculiarity, namely, they first attack the weakest member of the squad. The warriors are already secretly among themselves. They agreed that they would give Hiroto to grow up to be torn to pieces by a silver wolf. After that, they simultaneously said that they needed to escape from here. And turning to Hiroto, they asked him to do his best here. There were many tunnels and various passages in the cave. The warrior with the axe grinned nastily and pointed Hiroto in the right direction and told him to run there. Hiroto was shaking all over with fear and asked him that he must be just joking, right? The warrior with the axe grabbed the support by the shoulder and said that Hiroto would be their bait, and if the support sees that he ran in their direction, he must attack him with magic. Hiroto turned to the support and asked him that he wouldn't do that, would he? The support only averted the guilty eyes, but did not answer him. He started crying. I asked Hiroto for forgiveness. Hiroto himself was completely horrified and, after looking at the healer and the support, asked what was wrong with them. They're joking, right? It's just a joke, isn't it? The healers barely squeezed out words of forgiveness. She told him she didn't want to die. Shit, I told them to wait, because if they all work together, they will cope with the silver wolves. They're comrades. The support couldn't look up at him and kept asking him for forgiveness. Hiroto thought, why are they apologizing? After that, they left him alone, and they themselves ran away. Hiroto thought that is, they are trying to say that it is not his fault. This world is very cruel. There is no place for the weak in it. Even Yuzuki. Even she said he was weak. Hiroto tried to run after the guys, but a whole pack of wolves attacked him and began to call his body names. About this is where Hiroto will die. He doesn't want to be protected. He wants to protect others himself. He still hasn't gotten any stronger. He wants to become stronger. Hiroto wants to become stronger. The silver wolves kept tearing at his body. Then Hiroto's phone lit up. The wolves curiously surrounded this device and began to examine it. But then something scared them very much, and they ran away. It was written on the phone that the Demon Lord app was running. The analysis of the status of Ijima Hiroto has begun. A strong thirst for power was discovered. Access to Hiroto's soul was obtained. After that, Hiroto's body itself began to glow. His description was highlighted. HP was 0 out of 72. His level was 2. The soul link was activated. Strength 6, Agility 5, Endurance 5, Spirit 5, and Magic Power 5. And his MP was 10 out of 10. After that, the HP was completely restored. There are 180 seconds left before the soul connection. After a while, Hiroto came to his senses. He was terrified. He asked if he was still alive. However, why did his wounds heal? Not far from him, he saw his phone and, pulling for it, thought that was really all he had left. He picked it up, saw something strange. He asked what is the Demon Lord's app. He doesn't remember installing this app. Then he saw blood everywhere and said it was blood. Really? Then I remembered what had happened before. How those silver wolves called him to grow up. Hiroto suddenly felt sick. Then he threw up. He realized that it was definitely not a dream. He, of course, did not understand exactly what happened. But now he is alone. So, the fact that he was abandoned was not a joke. But in any case, he needs to get out of here now. Then, gathering his strength, he moved forward. He moved very carefully and carefully. Then he saw a huge pile of dead goblins on the road, and he said that it seems that the guys went this way. But then one surviving goblin attacked him, and bit him on the shoulder. Hiroto started shouting for him to stop, to make him stop it, but the goblin Awayon clung to his neck. Hiroto somehow managed to unhook the goblin from around his neck. He looked at this monster, and his whole mouth was covered in his blood. After that, the goblin began to beat him. Goblins are the weakest kind of demons, especially goblins who lose their arm. However, he is even weaker than them. Then Hiroto decided to take another look at this goblin, and this monster grabbed him right in the eye. Then he began to tear it apart. The system notified him that there were up to 10 seconds left before reactivation. After that, she reported that the soul connection activation was already available. The soul connection works for 24 hours. Thanks to the skill, a spiritual connection is established with the Demon Lord. At the end of the skill action, an unlimited bonus is given. Hiroto was healed again. The goblin fell into a stupor for a moment, but then he decided to attack him again. But this time Hiroto beat him to it. He stuck his 2 fingers right into his eye. Then he beat this goblin to death with a stone. The system notified him that he had killed a goblin that was not in Alphagard. The owner was Ijima Hiroto. A new skill called insatiability to the master has been successfully acquired. The voracity of the husky demons has been activated. The goblin was absorbed by the demon lord app. Insatiability to the master. Thanks to the skill, a power bonus +1 was obtained. The requirements under the name of gluttony were fulfilled. A special bonus was also received, and all his stats have been upgraded. The status window has started opening. A power bonus was received. The user's status has been updated. Now his HP was 242 out of 242, MP 12 out of 12. The power has become 7, and all subsequent stats have been increased by 1. Seeing Hiroto's status window, I was surprised. He asked what it was. Meanwhile, his team, which had abandoned him, was racing through the dungeon. The Demon Lord's app started up again on the phone. The analysis of the status of Ryuji Samejima has begun. After that, his entire characteristic was highlighted. His HP was 127 out of 127, MP 4 out of 4. Hiroto was very surprised and scared. He was looking at his status window, and also was next to the status window of a warrior with a sword whose name is Ryuji Samejima. Although his level I was 4, but all the other characteristics were much lower than Hiroto's. His HP was 127 out of 127, NP 4 out of 4. Strength was 4, Agility 4, Endurance 4, Spirit 1 and Magic Power is also 1. Hiroto kept sitting on the dead goblins and looking at his status window. He tried to swipe the status window with his hand, but it didn't work out. He asked, "What is this status window?" "No, it's more like a status from the game." Who got to him something and he said that really, right around the corner waiting for him. Well, how does he know this if he doesn't even see anything? He closed his eyes and tried to concentrate. He thought it was as if all the senses of his body had sharpened. He saw an orc coming at him in one of the tunnels. He opened his eyes and thought that he had heard that the thief class had a danger detection skill. Was he able to get such a skill? He got up and took the stone in his hands with which he killed the goblin. Apparently, Hiroto was very determined now. He threw a stone into the opening where that orc walked. Naturally, the monsters immediately noticed this, but at that moment, Hiro was just attacking him. He hit that monster right in the face with a rock. The monster lost its balance. He grabbed his face and started screaming. But Hiroto had no intention of stopping. He continued to beat up this monster. Hiroto thought that he had managed to catch this monster by surprise. However, he does not think that he will be able to defeat him so easily. After all, goblins and orcs differ in rank. Goblins were rank F, orcs were rank E and D rank silver wolves. Therefore, in order to overcome it, the element of surprise is important. Even with the stone, Hiroto won't be able to inflict serious wounds on this monster. But in this case, he just needs to hit the same place. And Hiroto continued to mercilessly beat at the same place of this monster. At some point, the monster had already stopped resisting. Hiroto was sweating all over in horror. He thought that he had finally managed. He got an achievement. In the achievement, it was said that he had killed an orc that was not in the city of Alphagrata. There was also a green window in which the skill was written. Hiroto began to read it carefully. He calculated that it was a skill called insatiability to the master. The Demon Lord's insatiability has been activated. The orc was absorbed by the Demon Lord app. Hiroto received a special bonus. All his stats were upgraded. He got experience points for killing an orc, and even his level has increased. Now his level was 3x and he now had 262 out of 262. MP was 14 out of 14. Strength 9, Agility 7, Endurance 7, Spirit 7 and Magic Power 7. But Hiroto still could not figure out what it was. He was looking at this status window very surprised. After a while, he got to his feet and began to carefully study his characteristics. He drew on his strength indicator. Hiroto thought that the highest strength index he has now is 9. He picked up his lesson, in which he was holding a bloody stone, after which he concentrated. He squeezed his hand with such force that he crushed the stone. Hiroto was very surprised, but also scared. After all, he did not expect this at all. From such a surprise, he even fell. The stone in his hand just shattered. But this is the same strength of a novice hunter in the academy. Where did he get such power from? Then the system window came again, in which it was written that he received new experience points, and the level has also been raised. He raised his eyes to this window and thought, is this really all true? Then, in the distance of the cave, he noticed a lot of bats. He gathered his strength and stood up resolutely. He collected all the remaining fragments of stones and started throwing them at the bats. Now Hiroto was finally able to understand something about this system. He became a mark to deftly throw the remains of the stone at the bats, beating them. He realized that if he kills a certain species and demon for the first time, then the master's veracity skill is activated. He received an additional power bonus from goblins and orcs, and the bat increased his agility. Power bonus +1 from the orc, power bonus +1 from goblin, and a dexterity bonus +1 from the bat. Do skeletons give a bonus to magic power? Hiroto received an endurance bonus from the stone golems. After all this, he opened the system window again. Now his level was 4. HP was 282 out of 282. MP 18 out of 18. Strength was 10, Agility 9, Endurance and 9, Spirit 8 and Magic Power 9. Hiroto, of course, heard that with a single hunt, the level rises very quickly. He thought that, however, he had already ascended 2 levels. It looks like the skill is valid for 24 hours. The soul connection skill allows you to avoid any fatal outcomes during the action of this skill. A spiritual connection is established with the soul of the demon lord. Well, in other words, now Hiro can do whatever he wants. He thinks that he should not waste time looking for a way out and return to the shelter. It's better for him to go deeper into the dungeon. Hiroto reached a strange wall, and touching her with his hand, he said that, by the way, would he be able to go further into the dungeon without permission? He exhaled sadly and thought that in that case he should deal with the silver wolves. Then a new window appeared. He looked up and read that it was a task. A new task was received during the passage of the novice dungeon. The quest will start in 10 seconds. Hiroto asked what the assignment was. I was probably not very happy about it and thought, oh my god, but what is it this time? Then the window disappeared. 10 seconds have already passed. Hiroto tensed and heard someone's footsteps, peering into the darkness, and I saw the silver wolf's paw. After that, the whole silver wolf himself appeared, and there was a whole pack behind him. They pounced on him mercilessly again. Hiroto backed away from fright and thought, isn't this the underwater floor of the dungeon? The system highlighted the word dexterity in red. Hiroto was very scared and thought it was a very bad idea. Something told him, which is right now, he is facing his death. The silver wolves completely surrounded him. Their leader was again the first to attack Hiroto, but Hiroto managed to slip away. He was very happy and surprised, and thought that he had succeeded. It looks like he really got stronger. He can even see all the movements of the silver wolves. After that, he ran away and kneed the silver wolf in the side. But the wolf didn't even fall on his side. On the contrary, it made him very angry. Now Hiroto has lost all hope. And I thought that is, it turns out that he can't handle it with his bare hands, right? Now all the silver wolves were very bloodthirsty. They were intent on killing Hiroto. The mole was very depressed. He thought, what is it? It seems, after all, nothing has changed since the last time. He was devoured by wolves again. They mercilessly tore up his body, ripping off his arms and legs, and completely gutting him. When Hiroto was final, dead, the soul connection was activated. His HP. I started to recover again. The system notified him that the supply of vital energy from the demon lord had been completed. All the parts of his body that were in his teeth. The silver wolves began to glow with blue flames. All parts of Hiroto's body began to fuse again. He opened his eyes and noticed a whole pack of silver wolves under him. After that, he fell into the very center of them. The silver wolves attacked him again. He was torn apart by them again. The system notified him that the minimum requirements for obtaining a new skill were met. A new skill called Level 1 Pain Resistance was obtained. The Pain Resistance skill has been activated. Now he had as many as 2 skills activated. 1 was Soul Connection, and 2 was Pain Resistance. Hiroto recovered again. He was once again a whole 100 silver wolves to her. He fell back into the inferno. Silver wolves with bloody mouths attacked again from all sides. An immortal body is still a curse rather than a gift. And this was in many films. Death during hellish tortures is salvation. However, the immortal body will never be saved. Therefore, immortality is a real curse. And right now it's happening to Hiroto as well. Was he torn apart by a pack of wolves again? Again, an alert came from the system, in which it was said that the minimum requirements for improving the skill were met. The skill level called Pain Resistance has been upgraded to level 3. Another similar notification came, in which it was written that the minimum requirements for obtaining a new skill had been met. A skill called Level 1 Fearlessness was obtained. He was looking at his stats again. He already had 3 skills activated, such as Soul Connection with Pain Resistance and Fearlessness. A skill called Pain Resistance blocks a part of more Hiroto. He's fully recovered again. At that moment, he thought that he no longer even felt like he was being eaten alive. This time he decided to fight back against the silver wolves. He once struck at them, but he understood that he could not cope with them with his bare hands. He needed at least some kind of weapon. At that moment, he remembered the dead Akira, whose body was pierced by many weapons. He thought with horror that this was why he had to go back. Still, he managed to escape from the silver wolves. He ran to Akira's body, which was still lying in its place, immediately noticed the sword in his body. Then I took it out. He began to take out the next weapon, but then a silver wolf appeared behind him. Then Hiroto took a small knife and slashed the silver wolf's neck with it. Hiroto thought that he was finally able to do it. Was he able to kill this silver wolf? Well, now it's time to start their crazy fight. A whole pack of silver wolves was already waiting for him. He remembered a program he had watched a long time ago at home. The man asked, "What is gaining experience? You can hunt alone without a team, and you can also choose stronger demons." The woman asked him, "What, is it really true? Let's say if a student from the Hunter Academy starts hunting 100 silver wolves, what exactly will happen then?" The man thought for a while, then said that if the hunter copes, then it will be a great achievement. Hiroto has dealt with a whole army of silver wolves, after which, standing all bloody, he screamed. A new alert has arrived, in which it was written that the minimum requirements for skill improvement were met. The skill level called Pain Resistance has been upgraded to level 4. The Soul Link skill has been activated twice. The minimum requirements for skill improvement have been met. The skill level called Resistance and Pain has been upgraded to level 5. Meet the minimum requirements to improve the skill. The level of the skill called Fearlessness has been upgraded to level 2. The level 5 Pain Resistance skill has been activated. The Soul Link skill has been activated. The level 2 Fearlessness skill has been activated. Hiroto received an achievement for killing a silver wolf. The skill of Insatiability to the Master was obtained. The Demon Lord's Insatiability has been activated. The silver wolf was absorbed by the Demon Lord app. Thanks to this skill called the Veracity of the Lord, a +1 power bonus was obtained. We also got a special bonus, and all the stats were upgraded. Hiroto also received the title. The title was called the Great Hunter. Ijima Hiroto received the title due to the killing of a large number of demons. Hiroto was reviewing his stats again. His level was still 4. HP was 282 out of 282. MP 18 out of 18. 3 abilities were activated, such as Soul Connection, Opposite, I Need Pain and Fearlessness. Strength was 10, Agility 9, Endurance 9, Spirit 8 and Magic Power 9. But after receiving the title of Great Hunter, his data began to change. The minimum requirements for skill improvement were also met. The skill level called Pain Resistance has been upgraded to level 5. Health was synchronized. Level 5 Pain Resistance has been activated and level 2 Fearlessness has also been activated. Hiroto was very surprised and asked, "What is fearlessness?" A great hunter. Well, there was more resistance to him, that's understandable. The system also sent him a description of the title O Great Hunter. In the description, it was said that this is a special title of S rank, which is awarded to those who were able to defeat a demon opponent with an overwhelming difference in strength. All damage dealt increases by 20%. The skill of Fearlessness, which he now had at level 2, about his maximum level was 9, increases the health bonus by 5% for each level. In the note it was written that this is not displayed in the status window, but is taken into account when calculating the skill level. Hiroto, after reading all this information, thought that if what is written here is true, then it looks more like a short-term bonus. How is it even possible to get 10 levels in just one day? He set his head and thought that he hadn't fully figured it out yet. How do these abilities work? So you shouldn't rely on them too much. His characteristics were revealed again. Hiroto, seeing his new characteristics, was very surprised. But apparently, I saw something new there and asked what it was. There was a bell on top of the status window, with a white exclamation mark and a red circle on the edge of it. After asking what it was, Hiroto touched this bell. After that, a new status window popped up. It was a time-limited assignment. You need to challenge the Great Maze. He was told that he had successfully passed the dungeons, and they asked him if he wanted to challenge the Great Maze where various monsters roam. In the note it was written that there are monsters of the same species in the maze. However, a skill called the Lord's Insatiability will treat them as previously not killed. Hiroto still didn't really understand what was happening to him, and said in surprise that the completion of the dungeon, but he hadn't been in the restricted area yet. Then Hiroto thought that, by the way, that forbidden zone is connected to another dungeon. He took a look at the whole pack and the slain silver wolves and thought that, of course, he was getting stronger, and thanks to a skill called the Lord's Insatiability, he feels the power filling him. He began to think about the system's proposal. He thought that the Great Labyrinth and various demons, to have without passion and to cope in the battle with death. Hiroto finally understood the difference between them, and he doesn't want to go through that feeling again. Then he remembered little Yuzuka, whom he could still protect at that moment. And he said that the status of the ellipsis. He'd better check now how much time the soul connection has left. He poked at the status window on the screen and the remaining time of the soul connection was highlighted to him. Hiroto clenched his hand into a fist and said what an idiot he was, after which he hit himself in the face. Why did he have such a shitty life? Everyone treated him like trash. Was it all because of his lack of talent? And is all this really fair? It's just a lie. After that, he calmed down and, getting to his feet, said that his wound had healed. And even with such powers, how can Hiroto have a future if he is afraid to make a move? After that, he plucked up the courage and said that he wanted to challenge the Great Maze. The system told him that the temporary assignment was accepted. Teleportation has begun. Hiroto then teleported away. Meanwhile, the team that had left Hiroto to die had already gotten out of the dungeon and were celebrating their victory. They had a very noisy party with a lot of alcohol. Ryuji Samejima raised his glass and said that in any case, at least accidents in the dungeons happen very often. The guy agreed with him and said that it was true. A soldier with an axe joined their conversation and said that, however, to die in a novice dungeon it still needs to be tried. After that, everyone started laughing loudly, clutching their bellies. Apparently, everyone was mocking Hiroto. The guy said no, but is it true how weak you need to be? The guy who was sitting on the floor said that even a child could handle it. The kid who was pouring drinks said that there were almost no dangers there, even beginners would have coped. The warrior with the axe calmed down and said that okay, jokes aside. To tell the truth, he feels very sorry for these guys. The guy asked, is it really true? He handed him a glass of alcohol and said that even if they were experienced hunters, anyone could shock everyone at the sight of a dead man. The warrior with the axe took his glass and told this guy not to talk nonsense. And he added that, by the way, an inspection from the Hunter Academy should come to them next week to conduct training fights. The kid asked what, and what about that trash, meaning Hiroto? The warrior with the axe put his glass on the table and said that he was their comrade. They are very sorry for this guy. After which he grinned and added that they could use it somewhere else. And again everyone started laughing. Then an application was launched on the phone of a warrior with an axe. It was the Demon Lord's app. The application of the Lord of Inches was launched. The analysis of the status of Murabashi Takeshi began. He was level 5. HP he had 137 out of 137. MP 5 out of 5. Hiroto has already lost count of how many times he has already been killed. He began to remember all those times when he was dying of those silver wolves that had torn his body apart. But Hiroto emerged victorious from there. Now he has teleported to where the system teleported him to. Hiroto thought that he finally got there. This was the last floor of the Great Labyrinth, and there he was stuck in an endless cycle of death and rebirth. But after so many attempts, he finally defeated the main boss. The system sent him an alert in which it was said that he had passed all the floors of the Great Labyrinth. The award for the player has begun, and as a reward, he gets a skill called Mana Awakening. A magic type skill was obtained. This is the Awakening of Mana. Hiroto was already level 15 now. HP was 475 out of 475. MP 156 out of 156. 3 skills were activated, such as Soul Connection, Resistance, Pain, and Fearlessness. His health was synchronized. His strength was 25, agility 22, endurance 22, spirit 20, and magic power 25. Reverse teleportation has begun. The system started, the players returned to the original world. Before he knew it, Hiroto was already surpassing ordinary hunters in everything. After his party, Murasabi Takeshi and his friend went to the roof. Murasabi Takeshi asked Ryuji Samejima if he had heard anything. Ryuji Samejima said that of course. He had heard these strange rumors about Hiroto. He wouldn't have been able to get out of the dungeon alive. Murasabi Takeshi agreed with him and said that it was true. After which, they both laughed out loud. Murasabi Takeshi asked what if he really had escaped. Ryuji Samejima said no, because it just can't be. Murasabi Takeshi told him that he remembers about their agreement to fight. Ryuji Samejima said that of course. After all, without this agreement, they would definitely not have coped. Then a kid came to them, and, calling out to these two, asked them if they didn't know yet. Ryuji Samejima turned to him and asked what. The guy hesitated and said that, as it were. This time they introduced new rules that each hunter can participate in only one battle. Both warriors were simply horrified. And at the same time they asked what was what. Meanwhile, Hiroto has already returned to his home. He was sitting next to the bed and put his head on his pillow. He thought that he didn't remember anything at all about the day he returned from the Great Labyrinth. A woman found him unconscious at night, and then she called for help. Hiroto thought he heard that he was found unconscious at the gate of the shelter. Was it all a dream? but this is the only logical explanation for everything that is happening. However, he reached for the phone that was lying on his bedside table and picked it up. He launched the Demon Lord's app. After that, all its characteristics were revealed. Hiroto looked at them carefully and thought that right now he has only two options in his head. Or he's imagining it all, or else all this is really happening to him. Then someone knocked on his door. Hiroto immediately got up and opened it. Ryuji Samejima was standing outside the door. The man gave him a nasty smile and greeted him. He asked Hiroto if they could talk. After that, the two of them went into the warehouse. Ryuji Samejima immediately got down to business and said that it so happened that he would be his opponent in a training fight. And holding out his hand for a handshake, I told him to take care of him. The consecrator said yes and held out his hand to him. And he himself thought that damn, he reflexively stretched out his hand. Ryuji Samejima said that, of course, if he already has a fight, then he will no longer be able to participate in other fights. But it just so happened that he had already arranged a fight with another, and he squeezed Hiroto's hand with all his strength. And having made a terrible grimace, I asked him that therefore it was better for him not to come at all. Did he understand it? Hiroto looked at their hands in amazement. Then they both looked at each other questioningly. Ryuji Samejima didn't understand what was going on. He thought that he was pushing with all his might. Why doesn't it hurt at all? Does he really suffer? Hiroto immediately guessed what was going on and thought that this was a skill called pain resistance, wasn't it? Until recently, the sight of him alone was enough to strike him with terror alone. But compared to the Silver Wolves, this man is just nothing. He's just an ordinary nobody. They lowered each other's hands and Hiroto, looking at this man, grinned. Ryuji Samejima couldn't stand it, so he decided to punch Hiroto in the face, asking him what was funny. Hiroto looked very surprised. What did you do in his brain? And he thought, what is he doing? He's moving too slowly. Maybe in that case Hiroto should answer him. After his reflections, Hiroto once struck at him. Ryuji Samejima staggered with a broken nose. He started to fall and wondered what had just happened. Ryujo Shiizime lost his balance from Hiroto's blow and fell. He wondered what it had just been. When Ryujo Shiizime came to his senses a little, he looked at Hiroto and thought, did he really do this? Is he really that weak? No, he's not weak. It can't be. Is this power because of the difference in levels? Ryujo Shiizime jumped to his feet and took Hiroto by the collar and called him. The man was shaking all over with anger and asked Hiroto, what? How dare he? As such trash, as he explained, to hit him. Has he completely lost his fear? What kind of cowardly attack was that? If he doesn't apologize to him right now, he will forgive him. But otherwise he won't get off so easily. Such a low-ranking one like him. After these words, Hiroto stopped listening to him. These words made him very angry. He had already clenched his hand into a fist in order to strike at this man. He thought that for the current him, he just. But then he exhaled and, relaxing his fist, thought no. If he breaks down, he won't be any different from these guys. And I told him that maybe they wouldn't cause problems. Ryuzo Shiizime asked what's what. But the man was still furious. He asked him what he was saying after he hit him. Hiroto grabbed Ryujo Shiizime by the hand he was holding and squeezed it with all his strength. And looking this man straight in the eyes, he menacingly told him that he would advise him to listen to his words. Ryujo Shiizime pulled his hand out of his death grip. After that, without saying a word, Hiroto went to his room. Ryujo Shiizime was very humiliated by this situation and shouted at the boy to stop. Hiroto stopped and, turning to him, said that he did not want to get into him. Therefore, he does not advise him to get it. Hiroto then left, leaving Ryujo Shiizime alone. He got furious and started shoving all the boxes. Hiroto calmly returned to his room. He took out a blood collection machine and thought that once a week he should donate blood for analysis and confirm his status as a hunter. Hiroto was last in line. The doctor was not very friendly. He was inclined to him and told him that he was the last one, so let him move quickly. And he asked if even the F rank is allowed to fight. Hiroto only apologized. When the doctor had already collected all the blood tubes and was about to leave, Hiroto stopped abruptly and turned around, looking at the doctor, thought that they were checking the status of hunters. And it turns out that they will see his level and status, right. He really hopes that he won't have any problems after that. Ryujo Shiizime returned to his room with his comrades again. He was furious right now. The kid took out a first aid kit and tried to seal all his wounds. But Ryujo Shiizime rudely pushed this boy away and said yes as soon as he dared to hit him. The situation with Hiroto did not give him any peace. He's just a freak. He couldn't even touch it. The boy asked him to calm down. Ryujo Shiizime thought for a moment, after which he asked but why is he so strong? Maybe he found some rare item in the dungeon. The guy told him that this is a dungeon for beginners. There shouldn't be and there isn't anything of value. and asked that maybe he found something expensive after the dungeon. After all, there are no other explanations for how he was able to get out of the dungeon alive. He doesn't see. Murasabi Takeshi said that it doesn't matter what happened to him anyway. They just need to deal with Hiroto. He just participates in the battles, and there he will deal with him. Ryujo Shidzime started shouting again. He asked his friend to wait, and I asked him if he really wanted to take revenge on him on his own. Murasabi Takeshi approached his friend and, grabbing him by the collar, told him that it was precisely because of his puncture that they were sitting here now. Ryujo Shidzime was surprised by this behavior of his friend and only asked for his forgiveness. Murasabi Takeshi let him go and sat down on the sofa again and said that every hunter's equipment was checked before the fights. Even if he has some rare item, it won't help him. Ryuji Shidzime has to think for himself. He's just an ordinary trash. Therefore, they should not even worry about it. Ryuji Shidzime also said that yes. However, Murasabi Takeshi grabbed his friend by the shoulder and told him to relax. As soon as the fighting is over, they will have a good talk with him. Then they will recoup from the heart. Meanwhile, the doctor who collected blood vials from children from the orphanage even dropped a bowl of noodles in surprise. He jumped up from his chair and asked, "What is this all about?" He was checking the results of Hiroto's analysis right now. The man jumped up and asked in surprise, "What is it?" A woman, a doctor, who was sitting opposite him and also checked the tests of these children, asked him if something really happened. The man said that yes, just a little problem. The woman got up and walked over to him to see what was the matter at all. The man said that Hiroto has never been to the Hunter Academy, but he already has level 15. The woman began to carefully study his analysis results and said that this child. But the man interrupted her and said that whether she sees this error next to his status. He hadn't heard that people who encountered the dungeon paradox also received an abnormal status. The man squinted at the test tube with blood and said that there was one such case in the training dungeon of this shelter, and he asked what and how to tell them about it to the authorities. Just recently, this guy was level 1, and suddenly he was already level 15. It looks like the director will have to shift his schedule. The woman asked him that did they need to report something until he enters the academy, then even if he has an abnormal status, it's not their concern. As she already said, because of the paradoxes of the dungeon, a lot of strange things happen. Everyone who will study at the academy will be able to become as strong as he is, and besides, this child has an ability of F rank. He shouldn't bother his head with it. The man still couldn't calm down and asked what, but isn't it too strange? Most recently, he was level 1. The woman stopped and, turning to him, asked what was strange. Demons appeared out of nowhere and the world changed a lot. And this is no exception either. She asked him if he didn't think there were too many strange things going on right now. So hunters can also be strange. Hiroto's characteristics have not changed in any way. He still had the status of a great hunter and his level was 15. XN he had 475 out of 475. MP 156 and 156. Pain resistance was level 9. Fearlessness was also level 9 and Mana Awakening was also level 9. His strength was 25, agility 22, endurance 22, spirit 20 and magic power 25. There was breakfast in the shelter now. Everyone was looking at Hiroto very strangely for some reason. One little boy, even looking at him, drooled. Everyone was surprised that Hiroto ate unusually much. He ate one bowl of porridge after another. Many guys came up to him and said that somehow he eats a lot. Someone even asked if he was their Hiroto for sure. Hiroto gave his next portion again, went to the porridge distribution and asked for more, and asked if they could bring all that was left. The man at the distribution said he didn't mind. After that, he received his new portion and sat down in his seat. A woman came up to him and said that he had a good appetite. She stood in front of him and, already sitting down on a chair, asked him that it was okay if she sat down. Hiroto didn't answer her. The woman, sitting down opposite him, asked what and where did he get such a big appetite. Hiroto looked at this woman and thought, does she really think that he is some kind of demon of gluttony? And hesitating, he told her that he had never seen her here before. And I asked her who is she? The woman smiled at him and said that she was the chief instructor of the Hunter Academy. Her name was Artemis. Hearing this, everyone gaped in surprise and started looking at their table. Artemis said that she came here to see the new talents at today's fights. She visits this shelter every year, and she is very surprised that he did not remember such a beauty. And I asked Hiroto if he remembered his little sister. Hiroto immediately remembered Yuzuki, and I thought that it was exactly the same because she spoke to her sister immediately after the fight. Artemis said that many schools claim to win. They better try hard. Hiroto said that's how. Then Artemis told him that, by the way, she was watching him too. And I noticed something. Hiroto began to stare at her intently. Artemis said it was clear. He was in that disaster in the dungeon too, wasn't he? Did he feel anything unusual or strange? When people get into the paradox of the dungeon, they may have unusual abilities. She was a scout for many years and her intuition helped her all the time. Maybe he knows something after all. She doesn't want to brag to him, but her intuition has never failed. Hiroto thought that she was the instructor of the Hunter Academy, who are now studying Yuzuki. Someday they will definitely find out about her. And he told the instructor that there was absolutely nothing special in his story. He is a very ordinary hunter with F-rank abilities. Artemis was surprised and asked what is F-rank. It turns out that he is exactly. But then she came to her senses and said that she was carried away. Her intuition must be wrong, too. She apologized to him and said that she had so unceremoniously forced this conversation on him. Hiroto did not let her finish and, getting up from his seat, said that it was okay, because it was a common thing. Artemis got up with him and asked him to stop. She told him that low-ranking hunters were almost no different from ordinary people. But this does not mean that they are alone. She handed him her business card and told him that if something happened to him, he could contact her. She would help him in any way she could. Hiroto looked at her more closely and thought that the strong in this world treat the weak differently. Some enslave the weak, and others are ready to help them. And this woman is very similar to Yuzuki. After some time, everyone gathered at the training arena. According to rumors, this place is used for testing new military weapons. Everything here is built from materials that were mined in the dungeons. And it's built like a battle arena. Everyone was already in their seats. Artemis also came to watch the fight. One fight was between Hiroto and Murasabi Takeishi. The two of them have already entered the ring. And Murasabi Takeishi told Hiroto that he would tell him directly in this battle. He could not ask for mercy from him. And, of course, he will attack it with all his might. In short, he may even die today. Murasabi Takeishi behaved proto-disgustingly. He said that accidental death is a common thing in duels of hunters. Previously, Hiroto would have been saved by his sister Yuzuki. But here's a pity she's no longer around. He added with a grin that if he died, he would already be the second dead man in their squad. Hiroto immediately understood what Murasabi Takeishi was driving at and hinted at, and remembered Akira. Murasabi Takeishi added that he really hopes they all have a good time. Murasabi Takeishi took a short pause and then, in order to finally shake confidence and break Hiroto, he added that in the afterlife. Hiroto couldn't stand listening to his chatter anymore and asked him if maybe he would finish chatting already. Murasabi Takeishi grinned, because he was very amused by this situation and he would not have missed the opportunity to hurt a little boy once again, and said that today he had reasons to take good care of him. If the inspectors show good results, then a bright future will be provided for him. After which, he very confidently threw his wooden sword aside. Hiroto still stood motionless. He was surprised by the behavior of Murasabi Takeishi and thought, what is he doing? Murasabi Takeishi continued to mock him and, taking more air into his lungs, said that he was just a pathetic F-rank. And he asked, what is the interest in beating him with a sword? Therefore, he decided that it would be better to use magic. Although he is a warrior, he also has magic. He mockingly asked Hiroto that a warrior who wields magic is a rare sight, isn't it? Hiroto looked very scared and annoyed at the same time. He thought that he was hiding his strength on purpose and left him to die in that dungeon. In that case, Hiroto told him that he should use his magic too. Hearing these words from Hiroto, Murasabi Takeishi began to laugh at him very loudly. He asked him if he was laughing at him, or what. He's just a regular F-rank trash, and with his powers, he wants to compete with him, or what? Hiroto tried to calm himself down, because he was already seething with anger and thought that compared to what he saw in the Great Labyrinth, Murasabi Takeishi is just an insect. The system notified him that the automatic activation of the skill had begun after applying magic. The level 9 Mana Awakening skill has been activated. There was a monstrous aura around him. Two friends who watched their fight from the stands were very surprised, as was everyone else. One of them said that this simply could not be. His friend asked that how F-rank can use magic. It's just nonsense. After all, even with magical abilities, how could he use a spell of such power? Everyone in the stand started whispering. Murasabi Takeishi realized that he could not scare him with his strength, which made him very angry, because he wanted to make a good, no, just a crazy impression on the instructors. He really wanted at least one of them to notice him. That's why Murasabi Takeishi was very angry and scared at the same time. He started shouting that where did he get such strength from? Let it burn to the ground now. And he used his skill called Fireball. The system notified Hiroto that he had received a new ability. This ability was called the Element of Fire, a flash of hellfire. Hiroto immediately applied this ability and said that a flash of hellfire. Murasabi Takeishi was very scared. but still he managed to duck and was not hurt. When everyone looked at Hiroto's strength, everyone exclaimed that it was so cool. The inspectors immediately began to fuss and began to record all his results. They started running and rushing and calling somewhere. Artemis was also there and immediately rose. She asked that it was the third stage, wasn't it? No, it was definitely stage 4 magic. There was Yuzuki that year, and now he. And this year she managed to find an amazing talent. After the duel, Hiroto thought that he vaguely remembered what happened after he used the Hellfire Flash. That day, he decided that he would go to the same academy as Yuzuki. A large amount of money was also transferred to his account. In one day, his life changed dramatically. Now he was already lying in his room on the bed and watching TV. Then he sat down at the table and he began to have a very strange dream. He met a man there who was chained up. He approached him and asked him who was he. Enter the moment, Hiroto woke up and saw that he had a phone in his hands. He immediately jumped up and was very shocked. He asked what is it? The system sent him that he had received the status of the Logic of Demons. New features have been opened in the app of the Lord in 36 hours. A special event called the Hunt for the Demon Lord will begin. The remaining time before his death was 35 hours 59 minutes 59 seconds. The phone screen showed that the remaining time before his death was 35 hours 59 minutes 58 seconds. Hiroto immediately began to panic. He asked what it was and why exactly at such a moment. Why such interference? He started shaking his phone violently. The system informed him that his decision is expected. After confirmation, new functions will appear in the application. After 36 hours, hunting bonuses will be issued. There are 35 hours, 59 minutes, 56 seconds left before receiving. Hiroto began to carefully examine the text and asked if the text was distorted. He had fun with it on his bed and put his phone screen down on the bedside table. He glanced at his phone and thought that at that moment something was written about the events and the Demon Lord, wasn't it? He got up and sat on the bed, but nevertheless, thanks to this application, he was able to become stronger. He went to the window and opened the curtains. He said it was all for the sake of getting stronger. The system sent him an alert again, which said that the remaining time until his death was 35 hours 59 minutes 42 seconds. If he wants to avoid death, he must immediately get rid of the Demon Lord's app. If no response is received within 24 hours, it will mean that he has consented to the death of the owner. The system asked him if he wanted to delete the Demon Lord app. After that, a strange funnel appeared on the phone screen. The Demon Lord himself felt it and grinned. Then something strange started happening. After some time, Hiroto reached for his phone again and picked it up. He looked at the phone screen and asked if there was interference again. For the safety of the roads, demons from the dungeons must be killed constantly. If you do not do this, then the so-called horde may appear. Despite this, they still have a lot to learn about the dungeons. Sometimes huge packs of monsters can appear and destroy a city just like this one. Hiroto was driving a car now, driven by a personal driver. They were driving past a ruined city. Hiroto thanked the driver for coming to pick him up, and I asked him what it means that this is the city in which the disaster occurred, isn't it? The driver told him that was true. This happened about 10 years ago. That is why it has become quieter here now. Hiroto drove away in the back seat of the car and looked out the window. Although this disaster happened 10 years ago, but the city was still in complete ruin and many monsters still roamed here. The driver added that, however, the authorities refused to deal with this area. Hiroto asked him, "What, is it really only the dead who live here now?" The driver corrected him and said that, more precisely, they were undead. It seems that the hunters of Artemis Academy have a lot of useful information. Hiroto asked that all these undead used to be humans, right? Then he began to explain to him that because of the invasion of demons, this whole earth was saturated with negative energy. That's why all these dead people appear here. Then one of these dead men jumped out in front of them and stood right in front of the car. But the driver mercilessly knocked him down. Now like a monster was lying behind the car. Hiroto sat up from his seat and looked out the back window of the car. Hiroto said that there is only destruction here. The driver told him that different cleaning methods were used in these areas, but chemical weapons were no exception. This country has decided to sacrifice this city. The driver gripped the steering wheel even harder and said that, however, the dungeon remained intact. If you do not destroy the monsters from inside the dungeon, there is a high probability that the catastrophe will repeat its own again. But the knight hopes that they will be able to prevent this. Here they were passing by some strange ruined building, inside of which there was a strange colored whirlpool. The driver drew Hiroto's attention to this phenomenon. He adjusted his mirror and said that that's where the dungeon is. He stopped and took out a cigarette and lit it. He said that he didn't think he possessed such outstanding abilities. He would only be at F rank. but even with low-level abilities, it's still a problem. And I asked him that the maximum level for F ranks is 25, isn't it? Even if you consider that there was a paradox in the dungeon, he still has a very low rank, so he thinks he shouldn't have gone to the academy. Then Hiroto got out of the car without saying a word. The driver, seeing this, asked him what he was doing. Hiroto approached him as well. He tore off his seat belt, but I also didn't tell him anything. The driver was very scared and said that he was an ordinary person and could not stand violence. Did he ask him to stop? He is, of course, very strong, but there are a lot of people who are just as good as him. At that moment, Hiroto had already started forcibly pulling the man out of the car, but the men resisted very much. He shouted at him that it was not worth making scandals about such an occasion, and I asked him that he could hear him at all. But then shit got him out of the car and threw him over his shoulder. The man was at a loss, asked what. The two of them approached a very scary monster. The man was very scared, but Hiroto remained unperturbed. This monster's name was Wendigo. He was Class B. The driver of the car asked if there should not be an alert about the appearance of such demons. Then the two of them took to their heels. They hid around the corner of the building and watched. Not far from this place, they saw another of the same monster, who trampled their car with his foot. The man took out his phone and said that, well, if he didn't notice them, then he thinks they should wait for the hunters here. According to the rules, every hunter of the academy must return from the dungeon at 4 o'clock. There is a famous flame witch in the group that is currently in the dungeon. Hiroto thought that the flame witch, is it really Yuzuki? He asked the man that it was a very dangerous demon with a Class B difficulty, wasn't it? Does he think they can handle him? The man told him that there are many gifted hunters studying at the academy. He doesn't know where this monster came from here, but they just need to hold out. It's only 5 minutes here. Elite hunters will take care of everything else. Hiroto said he had a question, and asked the man that his gun was real. The man's gun was in the inside pocket of his jacket. It was impossible to notice it with the naked eye. Therefore, the man fell into a stupor for a while, after which he asked Hiroto what is the use of conventional weapons. Hiroto took out his knife and, starting to threaten the man with it, told him that if he did not want to use it, then he asked to give it to him. The man recoiled from him and asked what he was carrying. Is he even in his right mind? Now a huge monster called Wendigo appeared over the building, around the corner of which they were hiding. He hung over the building and watched Hiroto, and this man. Hiroto remained as unperturbed as ever, and calmly told him that in this situation he had no choice, since they don't have those 5 minutes. The man was very frightened by Hiroto's words. He hesitated, didn't know what to say to him, because he was very scared. Hiroto told him that so they don't have those 5 minutes. This huge monster was still standing over them, but he was still inactive, because he did not notice them yet. After all, they were sitting very quietly in order not to attract too much attention and to think over their whole plan. Hiroto peeked around the corner of the building in order to assess the entire situation and begin to act. This monster looked around, because he really wanted to find his prey. He knew that somewhere nearby, and then this monster let out a growl. It was so loud that Hiroto and that man had to cover their ears to prevent their eardrums from bursting. But all the other monsters came running to this roar. Apparently the monster was planning this. The man asked Hiroto if he was completely crazy. What was he going to do to such a huge monster with ordinary weapons? This is a demon whose threat is comparable to a catastrophe. As an orphan, he thought he was crazy. Then he grinned and asked the man what, and what if so, and asked him politely to give him his gun. The man asked him to stop and asked that he at least knows how to use it at all. As he said earlier, it's just an ordinary weapon. Hiroto understood this well. He thought that this was true because a special field protects the body of monsters. Hunters also have such a field. That is why only hunters can break through this field. So Hiroto repeated his request, and once again politely asked this man to give him his gun. But the man was still kneading and could not give him his gun. Then, from around the corner, they saw some kind of blue glow. They realized that they had even less time. Therefore, Hiroto hurried him and said that it was faster. But I've already done it, not so politely. The man realized that he had nothing to do and reached for his jacket in order to get a gun. Then he handed his gun to Hiroto. Hiroto thanked him. The man told him that the post, at least, he would tell him how he was going to use it. Hiroto told the man that he would be the bait. The man fell into a stupor and asked him what he had just said. Hiroto had told him that there was a lot to learn about demons at the academy, and I asked him what are their weakest points. The man explained to him that he was just an ordinary employee. How would he know about it? This monster was already very close. They don't have any time left. Hiroto told the man that in a certain period of life they are very sensitive to noise. for example, to shots from a pistol and other weapons. And he also heard that such monsters were found all over the city. Yes, it's true that monsters like the Wendigo pistol pose no threat, but if it's something bigger, it might work. These monsters realized that people with such weapons are very dangerous, so they adapted and learned how to fight people. But then Hiroto and his driver were surrounded by these monsters from two sides. They had no time left at all. They had to act right now. But Hiroto remained the same calm and unshakable, although, most likely, he was also very worried and afraid, not only for himself, but also for this man who was appointed simply to accompany him. He calmly and without anguish told the man that he would shoot a pistol in that place, and pointed him in the direction. After that, these monsters would begin to gather around him, and then he will take them as far away from this place as possible. The man sat drooping, but it was clear from his tone and attitude that he had already decided everything for himself. He told Hiroto that he, of course, admired his courage, but it's just suicide. With his powers, he can't defeat such strong monsters. But if one-on-one, the man reached out to him with his shaking hand. Now he was very much afraid and worried, but still he was very determined, and told Hiroto to leave him and leave himself, even if he only has an F rank. But he is a hunter and it is immediately clear which of the two is more important now. So he's still so young now. These words made Hiroto stand in a stupor. He clenched his teeth with such force that there was a creaking sound, and his hands clenched into fists, and he was very angry himself. Hiroto viciously and sharply asked the man that is, if he ran away, then he would die himself, wouldn't he? He thought that. But he had had enough of all this. The elite hunters of the academy would come running anyway in 5 minutes. They just need to hold out until they arrive. He remembered the whole situation with Akira, and immediately remembered his look. This memory made Hiroto tremble, and I thought it was that look again. Hiroto, having regained his courage and determination, told the man that it was better for him to hide quickly, and he ran to distract the monsters. The man didn't even have time to stop him. He was just horrified and scared. He tried to stop him, shouting for him to stop and reaching for him with his hand. But it was too late, because the pistol shot had already been heard. There was no way back. This shot attracted all the monsters that were nearby. The first point of Hiroto's plan was successfully executed, and rushed to take them away from this place, fulfilling the second point of his plan. He thought that very soon it would get very hot here. He deftly avoided collisions with these giant monsters, driving them along uneven roads and all the time turning around the corners of dilapidated buildings. And at some point, the monster lost sight of Hiroto. Hiroto hastened to take advantage of this. He very cleverly deceived this monster. Hiroto kicked off the wall with his foot so that he was at the monster's level, or even higher. He jumped at him from behind. Hiroto swung his knife at him and stabbed the Wendigo right in the head near the forehead, and then cut his head to the back of the head. The monster fell to the ground. He was dead. Hiroto was hanging upside down, but he was very pleased that his plan did not fail. However, this was only the beginning. Hiroto said it was the first one. Meanwhile, Yuzuki was with his team inside the dungeon. Then she was hailed by a spearman of Ranka. He told her that she had incredible fire magic. The sorceress of Ranka was displeased and asked him if it was really true. That is, if a magic swordsman has a little more flame, then it means that he is immediately better than a real poppy, so what? Then I and the guy replied that since she says so, then maybe she will learn fencing herself. Her skills are so great that any ordinary swordsman is not standing next to her. Although their level is lower, but they are also very strong. He even thinks that with her in the team they won't be able to conquer any dungeon, right? Yuzuki was silent, but she was embarrassed by this situation. She did not look at anyone, lowering her eyes. Then she smiled at them all and told them that yes, they need to try very hard. The sorceress grinned and said that Kim was a genius. How could she not understand how much effort an ordinary hunter like them had to put in? There has never been such a thing before that students have covered all the dungeons. Another member of the team said that it was, although even without a team, she could do it quite well. Yuzuki said that she understands all this. She understands that everyone is not so talented, but still they can also become the same if they train a lot. The sorceress was very angry with her words. She clenched her teeth that they started to creak and said what kind of noble and innocent words she hears from S rank. They have it without much effort, just invincible. The A rank healer also sided with Yuzuki. He asked the sorceress what didn't she know. Yuzuki works much harder than anyone at the academy, and sometimes she even trains at night. Doesn't she think she shouldn't talk about her like that? Every morning she gets up before everyone else and goes to train with a sword in the gym. And she studies magic in the library until late at night. The sorceress apparently realized that she had gone too far. She might even have looked at Yuzuki with admiration. The spearman asked Yuzuki to tell him something. He asked her what she needed the power for. She has already achieved a lot. Yuzuki didn't answer him at first, just averted her eyes to the side. And after exhaling, she said that when she was a child, she was bullied at the orphanage. And then one guy came to her rescue. The healer was delighted with this guy and said that it was very surprising that the boy who was also bullied. I found the strength to protect her. It's very difficult for him to even imagine such a thing. But Yuzuki continued her story and said that when it was time for the test, she got the S rank. And he's rank F. She was very happy that he helped her then. That's why she decided that she also wants to become a person who is able to protect the weak. The sorceress grinned and said that this guy was very brave, since he protected the girl from bullying. And now, of course, he trains himself to death. And I asked her what was the problem with assembling a team. Yuzuki said that everyone here has ranks ranging from B to A. If they put in more effort, they can handle everything. But, unfortunately, that guy doesn't have a chance. After all, he has F rank. After that, the whole team began to slowly leave the dungeon. One Yuzuki came out of it. What she saw here shocked her. A spearman followed her out, who asked what was the matter. A driver was rushing to them for help, and the car that was screaming to be rescued. And behind him was a whole crowd of those monsters. Hiroto got rid of that monster. He was able to kill him with a single blow to the head. But then he was attacked by two of the same monster. He used his agility, which was now 22, and with her help, he managed to evade his blow. He thought that one-on-one he could handle him. He pushed off from the ground with all his strength and landed on the neck of this monster. Then he presented a gun to his head. He asked him what about such and such a distance. But then this monster roared. He grabbed Hiroto with his huge hand. Hiroto thought that it was understandable that his wound was not so deep and only grazed the skin. Using his knife, he freed himself from the clutches of this monster, and he himself thought that this is what hunters are for. After that, he dealt with this monster. He said it was great, but then he looked around and said that's it. So now they decided to attack him in a crowd. A whole army of these monsters gathered around him. Meanwhile, Yuzuki's team easily dealt with the monsters that were chasing the driver of the car. She asked why there were so many of them here. The spearman said it looked like some kind of disaster had happened here. Yuzuki approached the driver of the car and asked him, which way is that student? The driver of the car was very scared, but still raised his shaking hand and pointed in the right direction, saying that over there. Yuzuki realized where you were and, rushing to his aid, said that she would help him. The man tried to stop her, but Yuzuki wasn't listening to anyone. Meanwhile, Hiroto has already dealt with all the monsters. He was sitting on the ground all tired. He looked around and exhaled. He said he was finally done. The system notified him that his level had been raised twice. Now he had level 17. His HP was 514 out of 514. It increased by 39. MP was 175 out of 175. It increased by 9. The list of skills was as follows: Resistance over level 9, Fearlessness level 9, and Mana Awakening level 9. His strength was now 28, 3 was added to it. Dexterity now left 24, 2 was added for the battle. The endurance was now 24, 2 was added for the battle. The spirit was 24, 4 was added for the battle, and the magic power was now leaving 27. The scored was added 2. Hiroto exhaled and said that he was finally done. He got to his feet and said that he should move to the car. Hiroto has already moved a sufficient distance away from these monsters. He thought that he had killed them all, but in fact it was not so. Then one of these monsters came to life, and after him, the others began to come to life. Hiroto kept moving towards the car and thought that the necessities were in the car. Then his phone vibrated. He received a new notification from the system, which said that the remaining time until his death is 11 hours 59 minutes 56 seconds. Meanwhile, Yuzuki ran as fast as he could to save that student. She remembered where the man had pointed her and was moving in the right direction. But then she came to a fork. She fell into a stupor because she didn't know where to go next, but then she applied her skill. Her skill was called Level 9 Trains, and now she has activated it. A map immediately appeared in her head, and now she knew where she needed to go. The map clearly showed her which way she needed to move, and only S-rank hunters have such a skill. She received a message from the gods. Monsters are like in a dungeon game, like in a game. In addition, a window similar to the game status appeared. She grinned and thought that if this is a made-up story, then someone is clearly very bad with fantasy. Was she able to get the power? No, more precisely, it was given. This world is simply unfair. When she was still a child, there was one guy who fought against such injustice. She thought he was a real hero. However, she no longer wants to rely on others. Now he is not able to protect anyone. Their world is full of different crazy creatures. That's why she received such power in order to resist them. Instead, she promises that no one will cry next to her. Then she saw her target. She ran to him as fast as she could and asked if everything was okay. But she didn't have time to finish because she was very shocked. She didn't expect these students to be Hiroto. She asked if he was Hiroto. Hiroto himself was as surprised as she was and couldn't tell her anything. After some time, they all gathered in one place and were already driving in the car. Hiroto apologized for having to give them a ride. The spearman said it was okay because their car was destroyed by a Wendigo, and it's not a burden to them. Hiroto was sitting in the very back seat. He was sitting there alone, so he decided to have fun. He thought that he was, of course, very grateful to them for giving them a lift. But why was he being treated so badly? It's even uncomfortable to sit here. The spearman was sitting now, sorting out papers. He said that, but who would have thought that their daredevil turned out to be an acquaintance of Yuzuki? And besides, his skills are rated D rank even before entering the academy. He could not have imagined that he could have such power. If he already has such strength before entering, then he must be no weaker than them at the academy. The sorceress decided to cheat and asked what, maybe they would still take him to their team. The spearman asked her what kind of nonsense she was talking about. The only thing that surprised him a little was his strength before entering the academy. He laughed and said that after all, he was an ordinary F rank. He really can't achieve much. He is already close to the maximum level of his rank. The sorceress turned back to look at Hiroto and asked, what is the F rank? But it's a pity. He's got a pretty face. The healer told her that she was, as always, very cruel. And I asked her that who would choose the guys according to their rank. Hiroto didn't pay any attention to them at all, just ate his sandwich that was given to him. The sorceress asked the healer what is the big deal. She doesn't want to be with a guy who is weaker than her. And about the guys who don't even have a future, there can be no question. Then the spearman decided to turn to Yuzuki and asked her what kind of relationship does she have with this guy. Yuzuki said that he is a very special person for her. The swordsman grinned and said that wow, and he asked if he was really special. Yuzuki said that they had always been together before, and he always defended her when she was bullied. The spearman said that, however, now he is a weakling, he is no longer able to protect her. Yuzuki said it was true, which is why he doesn't need to protect her anymore. Then Yuzuki called Hiroto. She told him that when he had training in the dungeon, then let him call her. He will join him. Hiroto was confused, but Yuzuki didn't say anything, although it was clear from him that he was very glad that Yuzuki was worried about him and offered him his help, at a time when life was not very easy for him. But the spearman continued to mock him. He tried to hurt Hiroto in every possible way, and he was also apparently very interested in how Yuzuki would react to this, so he continued to enjoy this situation. He told Yuzuki that she shouldn't confuse personal relationships with work. As one of the strongest hunters in the country, she has obligations. She shouldn't worry about such a small thing. But Yuzuki, without even thinking about the answer, sharply and clearly replied that no. For her, who has never had a family, he is the only native person. By doing this, she made it clear that Hiroto is really very important to her. The spearman clearly did not expect such an answer, and the only thing he said was that he understood. Here they have already arrived at the right place. Everyone slowly started to get out of the car. Hiroto called out to the spearman and told him to come to the common room, because he had a conversation with him. A seal was placed on one particular area in that city. The monsters that were inside this seal couldn't get out of it, but they couldn't stay inside either. Since everyone inside this seal, they died. And not just died, not even people remained of them. There were several such seals. Their blood began to collect from each of these areas. This blood gathered into a huge and perfectly smooth purple ball. This entire ball was entirely made up of the blood of those creatures. After the blood was completely collected from this ball, a huge monster crawled out. Several huge monsters, their whole army, and they all went to the dungeon. Meanwhile, at the Artemis Hunter Academy, a training hall, Spearman gathered his entire team, including Hiroto. The healer asked the spearman to listen to him and told him that earlier on the first day, the newcomers did not have training fights. The spearman grinned nastily and, adjusting his glasses, said that they, as seniors, should drive all the rules into their newcomers. With this approach, he is confident that they will be able to better prepare newcomers for real battles. The healer squinted at Hiroto and said that, of course, he didn't mind, and he thought that it looked like personal hostility was clearly involved. Apparently, the spearman just wanted to frame Hiroto or show him in the best light for him. Yuzuki was standing next to Hiroto. The spearman said that having the rank of F and the combat score reaches the rank of D. With such indicators, going alone on a Wendigo is just madness. He has no new choice, they have to deal with it as soon as possible. And for this, he is ready to personally help him. The sorceress rudely said that she didn't care that he was bullied, she also had a hard time. So stop playing this circus here. She walked past Yuzuki and Hiroto and, looking at Yuzuki, said that, by the way, even their genius had problems, didn't she? Yuzuki, apparently, was most uncomfortable with this situation. She closed her eyes and, gathering her strength, said that in the committee, there was no one stronger than her. The sorceress looked at Yuzuki again and said that she really didn't like her. Then she left. The spearman approached the wall on which the wooden swords hung. He began to carefully examine, choosing the right one. The spearman said they would be enough. They have to believe him that the sooner they finish, the better it will be for everyone. Choosing the right sword, he threw it at Hiroto's feet. I took my wooden sword myself and told him that I would forgive him if he got a few injuries. It's all for him. Hiroto stood in a stupor and did not know what to answer him. Yuzuki couldn't stand it anymore and, coming forward, told him to wait because she was against it. She is against this training fight. After these words of the southerner, the spearman changed his face and became very angry. He started talking very rudely and said he was doing it as the president of the disciplinary committee, which must monitor the observance of discipline among all students. In the future, if he also continues to take risks, he may endanger his entire group. But Yuzuki did not frighten him at all about the tone, and she also began to talk rudely to him, saying that bullying a novice is absenteeism. He won't stand up against an experienced hunter. There must be another way. Such measures, which were previously used by the military, have not been used for a long time. The spearman tried to pull himself together and adjusted his glasses again. Interrupting Yuzuki, said that they did not use military methods. That's what hunters do. And as the chairman, he is responsible for the education of newcomers. Yuzuki continued to stare at him intently, but she didn't say anything to him. Hiroto was still standing behind Yuzuki and was silent. He only looked at her. After a short silence, Yuzuki gathered her strength and said that she was a graduate of the second year of the Hunter Academy. She is the vice president of the student council and a member of the disciplinary committee, so it's up to her to decide. And she forbids such a fight. She will not allow anyone to dare to mock the weak. After which there was an awkward silence. The spearman was very angry. The sword that he had been holding all this time in his hands, he threw. Then he just left. The healer tried to follow him, asking him to stop. Soon he himself went after him. Yuzuki and Hiroto were left alone. Hiroto looked at his childhood friend. Yuzuki guiltily bowed her head and asked for his forgiveness. She said that in such an academy, his abilities decide everything. After that, she walked past him to the exit of this classroom. Standing with her back to him, she said that he still had a lot to go through. The weak have their own way of fighting. He does not need to overexert himself. After all this, Hiroto was left here alone. He looked around and said he thought he should clean up here. When he had already cleaned up that auditorium, he walked out of it. It was already night outside. Hiroto looked very lost. He asked that where is the hostel, but then someone asked him to stop. It was a spearman. Apparently, he didn't want to let Hiroto go so easily. He was very angry about this whole situation, and that Yuzuki was protecting him so much, because he was so weak. He told Hiroto that even though Yuzuki had said her word, how, in his opinion, he needed to be taught a lesson. After that, right in front of him, he began to defiantly pull on his gloves. But Hiroto wasn't scared at all. He just looked at him in bewilderment and asked him what, that is, he should fight with him, right? The spearman said of course not. He just wants to teach him a lesson in discipline. Hiroto asked, what can they start then? The spearman stiffly smiled at him and said yes, he doesn't mind. But while he was finishing the last word, Hiroto did not show off like that and, without saying a word, was already behind him. Hiroto hit him on the back of the neck so that the spearman passed out. Hiroto managed to catch him so that he would not fall and carefully put him on the floor, then left. After all, unlike the spearman, Hiroto did not want to harm him and demonstrate her strength, which is why he resorted to this method. The spearman's name is Omichi Kazuya, although he was born into a special family, but his name is completely ordinary. He was born into a family of hereditary elite hunters, and he always got the best of everything. Therefore, from early childhood, he knew that he was special. And one day, walking from school, after lessons, 2 adult men accosted him, which we see, just wanted to make fun of him. Although Omichi Kazuya was very scared, but still decided to hit the man in the face. But he himself did not expect such an outcome. Since he was very scared, he hit this man with his eyes closed, because he didn't even want to look at him. This man had been holding him by the neck all this time, so when Omichi Kazuya hit him, he fell to the ground and tried to regain his breath. But a huge crowd had already gathered around, which greatly strained Kazuya. When he came to his senses a little, he saw what he had done. although he thought that the blow was so strong. But the man was on the other side of the street. He broke several cars and smashed them into a shop window. From that moment everything began. Rank is an indisputable sign that a person is an elite hunter, and it was inevitable that he would be able to enter the prestigious academy for hunters without any problems. But even in such a place, he remained special. It looked like he was the chosen one of the gods themselves. But then, for the first time in his life, he was able to see someone who was more talented than him. And she was of S rank, Yuzuki. In other words, she was superior to him in everything. And then he realized that she was the perfect companion who deserved to be with him. And then he wanted her. After all, she is just like him, special. She's just the perfect companion the gods sent him. In the morning, Omichi Kazuyu woke up on the floor of his academy. He looked a little scared, confused. When he got up, he asked what had happened. There was an unplanned meeting on the same day. The man apologized for having gathered them all without warning. But it seems that signs of a horde of demons were found in the dungeon of their academy. All the students were very scared. The man went on to say that as they already know, they still have a lot to learn about the dungeons themselves. But one thing he can say for sure. Now the mana concentration level in the dungeon has reached a dangerous level. Thanks to special artifacts, they were able to find out that there is now a huge army of demons in the dungeon. And if they do nothing, then all these demons will break out and it is unknown what kind of catastrophe they will bring with them. And now he sees only one way out. Prevent this situation. They must destroy the demons of the dungeon and reduce the concentration of mana. They have very little time, which is why they cannot expect help from other associations. The students were very scared and started talking to each other. Someone said they were mobilizing students. Are they seriously going to do this? This, of course, was mentioned at admission, but isn't it too much? Have they gone mad? Do they really want to say that there is an emergency now? The man tried to calm them down and said that he understands their concern. But he asks them all to have the courage. All instructors of this academy are elite hunters. Instructors with a squad of students will be responsible for a certain area of the dungeon. That's it. Now all the students have to go back to their classes and prepare for the battle. They should expect further instructions from their instructors. Hiroto was also present at this meeting. He thought that on the first day at the academy he managed to get into trouble. Artemis was standing next to him. She asked him for forgiveness and said that, apparently unsuccessful. He chose the moment to come. Well, if his abilities are really that good, then he can quickly become an elite hunter. Well, okay, she'd better introduce him to class. Of the guys who heard this started asking if he was really in class A. Isn't he a beginner with F rank? Some guy said he heard he had pretty good stats, but he's still only in F rank. And why did they decide to send such a kid to class A? If he has F rank, then he will not rise above level 25. Hiroto immediately remembered Yuzuki's words in that class. She told him that in this academy, his ability decides everything. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then Yuzuki called out to him. Artemis also immediately started up and said that it was interesting. Yuzuki told him they needed to talk, and she asked Hiroto if he would give her some time. After that, the two of them went to another place to talk. Seeing all this, the spearman went into a wild rage. Hiroto and Yuzuki went out into the garden. Yuzuki told him that a disaster was likely to happen in this dungeon. Hiroto was scared and asked what. Yuzuki said she wasn't sure, but it was just her hunch. And, most likely, it's because of her ability. Hiroto asked her what then. What does she propose to do? Yuzuki said that her group will deal with dangerous monsters in the depths of the dungeon, and he and his group will destroy them closer to the surface. Hiroto asked her what could be and would be better to tell the instructors about it and coordinate it with their plan. But Yuzuki told him that she did not think that they would take seriously the premonition of one of the students. But Yuzuki hesitated and lowered her head. After gathering her strength, she told Hiroto that he might not believe her, but if there really is a god in this world, then it seems to her that he specifically chose her and made her special. She came closer to Hiroto and, taking his hands in hers, seriously told him that, whatever happened to him, he should run to her right away. Okay. When a disaster occurs, everyone is panic-stricken. A pitch-black hell begins in the dungeon, and death falls on everyone. But he shouldn't worry too much. He should remember, because she will always be with him, and she will protect him. A group of 3 guys gathered not far from them, who were also concerned about this situation. Did one of them say that they decided to mobilize all the students? But what kind of nonsense is right? Maybe then they won't go. The main one of their company, a guy with an earring in his ear, turned to them and asked if they were really idiots. If they don't show up, they will be expelled from the academy. The guy with the blonde hair said it was true. The job of a hunter, though dangerous, but also the payment. Some guy interrupted them and said that it looked like there wouldn't even be a reward this time. Then a spearman came to them. They asked him what down was driving or what. The spearman told them that even though they lacked manners, but they're capable guys. The guy with the earring said that look how someone came to them. What are his fates here? The spearman grinned and said he had a business proposition for them. He wants them to. No, he wants them to help him get rid of one guy. And thus, each of them had their own plans. The events that will take place in the most dangerous dungeon filled with demons. At this moment, events will begin that will cause a huge number of deaths of students and instructors of the Hunter Academy. A new notification came to Hiroto's phone. It said that there were 0 hours 0 minutes 0 seconds left before the start of the hunt for the Demon Lord. At the moment, confirmation of the participants of the event is expected. At one of the levels of this dungeon, the team has already dealt with all the monsters. Now they decided to take a little break. Two friends retired and decided to talk. The kid exhaled and stretched. The girl told him that, as she looked, he wasn't nervous at all. The guy told her that at first he was very worried, because it was called an emergency gathering. However, surprisingly he is quite calm. Such work is more suitable for them than dangerous battles. And then this girl noticed something in the distance. It was the same black demon that had recently awakened. The girl asked that who is this? Meanwhile, Hiroto and the girl stripped the whole team of Omichi and tied them up. Murano got to her feet and, stretching, exhaled. She dusted off her hands and put them on the sides, said that it was great, now they were all connected. Hiroto still looked very excited, and he just said yes. Murano told him that she had heard rumors that his powers were on par with experienced hunters, but now she was convinced that his abilities definitely surpassed the level of the students. Hiroto didn't say anything to her, just stared at her. Then he looked away. Murano asked him that maybe he would share his secret with her. Hiroto asked what secret. Murano was glowing all over and said that the secret of his incredible strength. Hiroto told her that no, he couldn't do that. Murano came closer to him and pouted, asked what was that. She asked him that if he wanted, she could tell him about all the weak points of the monsters, so what? Is it really such a terrible secret? Hiroto told her something like that. Then this Black Lord got to them. Hiroto immediately tensed up and said that they had just dealt with a problem, and now a new one has already appeared. Murano asked if it was really a rare monster. She had never seen such a monster before. At that moment, Hiroto remembered Yuzuki's words. Then she told him that a catastrophe was likely to happen in this dungeon. Hiroto discovered his stats and thought that the higher his dexterity, the better his perception, right? Now his agility was 24. Here this Black Knight stopped and began to draw his huge sword. Hiroto and Murano watched his every action. He really scared them. The Black Knight took out his sword and began to move towards them. After which, he picked up his speed and headed straight for Hiroto. But Hiroto used his agility, instantly moved to this monster behind his back, and was about to stab him with his knife. But this black demon noticed him and moved to another place with great speed. Now he was right behind him and had already swung his sword in order to strike at him. But Hiroto noticed it too and managed to evade it. But still the Black Knight grazed his shoulder. Clutching his injured shoulder, Hiroto realized that this monster was faster than him, and he won't be able to handle it so easily. Murano ran up behind Hiroto and called out to him. But right now Hiroto wasn't paying any attention to her at all. He was completely focused on this Black Knight. He thought that he really had very little chance of winning. However, the bag contains a special mixture of hot pepper and mandrake root. If you apply fire magic to him, then this Black Knight will start burning. After doing all this, Hiroto thought that it was good that he took it with him. And then he swung his little knife and struck the last blow at this Black Knight. Now it was the end. But when Hiroto was about to deliver the final blow, he saw that he was hiding behind the armor of this black monster. He asked if there was a skeleton inside the armor. At that moment, Hiroto was a little distracted from surprise and fright, and this Black Knight took advantage of it. He managed to grab his sword and swing at Hiroto, but Hiroto blocked his blow with his knife. But the Black Knight revealed his weapon from his hands. But Hiro did not lose his determination. He understood that this Black Knight was very strong, but he himself was not going to give up. He was very adept at dodging all of his attacks, and after grabbing his hand, he hit him against the wall in the dungeon. He grabbed him by the throat and tried to pull off his helmet. After some time, Hiroto still managed to get rid of this strange Black Knight. Murano, who had been standing behind him all this time, watching their fight, asked if he had really broken his neck. Hiroto stood up and said that his rank was F. Of course, he really wanted to become stronger, and for this he trained a lot. Now Hiroto no longer looked so drooping, but on the contrary, he was very inspired. Before that, the Black Knight had killed many more students from this academy. He attacked Yuzuki's group. Her whole team was very scared. They asked what it was and where it came from. The Black Knight did not answer anyone. He killed many students with just one swing of his sword. Someone from the group heard strange noises and decided to see what was going on there. But when he came to this place, he asked what had happened. Are they all dead? Artemis shouted everything that they should get ready. Wasn't that why they became hunters? The student who was standing next to her was shaking all over. He was very scared, and he told Artemis that they weren't students yet. And wait a minute, isn't this the disaster that was said? Artemis could no longer get this from them from the bed. She said that it was true. This is exactly the kind of disaster. So they all need to come to their senses already. She exhaled and said that they had already requested help from the Hunters Guild. If they can't beat him, then they just need to hold out until they arrive, and they'll take care of him. Around them there was a protection of guards with shields. One of these guards said he would take command. Artemis told everyone else that, so they also need to try to ensure that everyone stays alive. And besides, now there is a hunter with him who has already reached the rank of B. Their instructor Godai is also here. After this information, the students calmed down more or less. Did they say it was true? They will definitely cope with the instructor. They too. But at that moment Artemis was killed. This black hunter threw his sword and plunged it right into the head of this instructor. Artemis was dead. The students somehow tried to pull themselves together. One of them was shaking all over with fear, but still said that the instructor was still. At this moment, everyone looked at the instructor, but he was also defeated by this Black Knight. Instructor Godai was lying on the ground. Oh, the Black Knight just walked through his head, crushing it. After that, all the students were terrified and started screaming. So they all died in the depths of the dungeon. The Black Knight got to them, too. Yuzuki wanted to go into battle, but the healer grabbed her by the shoulder and called out to her. He told her that even the instructor couldn't handle him. But she can beat him, can't she? Yuzuki also looked very depressed. She said that maybe she could even lose. Her unique skill is a ferocious divine dragon, and this skill allows her to infuse a great divine dragon into her body and temporarily double her stats. The healer told her that he knows how high the price is for using her skill. Her life expectancy will decrease. However, only she can defeat him, so he begs her to sacrifice her life for all of them. But in fact, no one knows whether the duration of her life is really shortening. But, according to scientists, there is every reason to believe that this is true. After which Yuzuki didn't say a word. He threw off the healer's rock and, taking his sword, rushed into battle. The healer said thank you to her. Yuzuki didn't even look at them. She was very disappointed in them, because they are fucking selfish. They're all just disgusting. After which, she activated her skill. The ferocious divine dragon was activated. Yuzuki said she was taking this monster on herself. She turned to the rear guard and told him to provide support, and she herself thought that she simply had to cope. Now we are like heroes of fairy tales. That was exactly the role she was destined for. This is its purpose. After Hiroto defeated one of these Black Knights, they sat together with Murano and looked at him. Murano said that this dungeon belongs to the academy, and of the monsters here, there should only be hybrids. But in that case, where would such undead come from here? And besides, so strong. Hiroto remembered Yuzuki's words again. Then she told him that a catastrophe was likely to happen in this dungeon, and he told Murana that he would also like to know it himself, and he's very worried about Yuzuki. That's why he's going to go to the lower levels. Myron asked him if he was really worried about the strongest huntress in the academy, although he will certainly be able to help her. But it still does not reach their level, so she's staying here. Ever since she was a child, all the time she was training turned out to be useless. Then she received a strange message on her phone. Murano took her phone and looked at the screen questioningly. It was written there that a strong thirst for power was detected. Access to Ito Murano's soul was obtained. Murano was very surprised and thought that the thirst for power. Then Hiroto called out to Murano and asked if something really happened. Murano looked very scared. She shook her phone in her hands and said she didn't know. It was like some kind of virus. But then it seemed to her that she said something strange. After that, she began to justify herself to Hiroto and said what she meant. Let him not think, because she does not visit any obscene sites. Murano blushed all over and started waving her arms. But Hiroto didn't even think about something like that. He just thought she was very interesting. After which he got to his feet and was about to go. But then Murano stopped and asked him that before he left, could he promise her one thing? Hiroto stopped and looked questioningly at Murano, asking what to promise. Murano said that yes, she had not yet had time to thank him for saving her, which is why he should not die. She will definitely repay him this debt, so he must definitely come back. And she held out her hand to him. But Hiroto was still looking at the girl questioningly and asked what. Murano was embarrassed and said that as soon as he returned, she would definitely treat him to coffee in their cafeteria. Maybe he didn't know it, but the coffee there is very tasty. Hiroto thought that one could even die for this taste. She really is a very interesting person. He smiled at her and said he was fine, and they shook hands. Then he even imagined how they were going to drink coffee together after all this terrible situation. Then something happened and Hiroto jumped to his feet. He was still holding Murano's hand. Murano looked at him questioningly and called out. Hiroto looked at his stats again, and as he thought, dexterity greatly affects perception. Now I was 24 in dexterity. It was very bad. After all, 10 of the same knights are approaching them now. Hiroto decided to hide Murano in a cave and move the stone so that these black knights would not find her, because Hiroto really wanted to protect her. Murano tried to dissuade him anyway and said there were as many as 10 of them. But Hiroto was very determined and told her that he knew what he was doing, so she shouldn't worry so much. It seems that they haven't noticed them yet. She won't be able to cope with such an opponent, so it's better for her to sit here for now. Murano did not argue with him. Apparently she herself understood that it was useless, so she said that it was good. Hiroto told her to wait for him. While Hiroto was moving the stone, Murano thought and mentally told him that he should be careful. After that, Hiroto began to wait for these 10 black demons, but they did not keep him waiting long. Hiroto realized that it was bad. He doesn't think he can beat them all. Then one of them immediately attacked him, but Hiroto barely managed to dodge his attack. He thought that was the speed. He understood that there were too many of them. But will he be able to cope with so many at once? They surrounded him from all sides, and they tried to attack him all at the same time. Hiroto dodged their attacks with a trick, but still he was given all this with great difficulty. He understood that it was simply impossible. And then while Ono was dealing with one of the black demons who was standing in front of him from behind, one of them pierced him through with his sword. Hiroto lost his vigilance, and all these 10 demons began to shred him. They were very ruthless. Hiroto couldn't resist them. But he's been through so much, but in such a place. He's still. At that moment, he died. The Black Knights crowded around his corpses and thought that where did the man come from on their holidays? Then a system alert came in which it was said that the hunt for the Demon Lord would end in 0 hours 0 minutes 0 seconds. The system expects confirmation from the participants of the event. If the player dies outside the created room, the connection will be broken according to the rules. After some time, the system notified that a match was found. It was a sealed demonic dragon called Vritra. The transfer to the realm of Vritra has begun. Then Hiroto woke up. He looked very scared. He began to examine the place where he was resurrected. It was a roadway. He was in a very strange city. But what scared him the most, it was a huge monster. Hiroto asked, "What is it?" Then the system sent him information that apparently contained something necessary for Herta, something that will help him defeat the demonic dragon. In the information window, it was written that training for the Demon Lord Hunt event was beginning. Hiroto's opponent was a sealed demonic dragon. This demonic dragon is called Vritra. This demonic dragon looked very intimidating, and fire was coming out of his mouth. So also this demonic dragon could fly. This demonic dragon took off and destroyed Hiroto in the blink of an eye. Hiroto didn't even have time to figure out what had happened. After some time, Hiroto was reborn again. An information window appeared in front of him, in which it was written that this information was about training. They asked that how did the baptism with the breath of Vritra go? But he was told not to worry about it, because it's a one-time procedure. In addition, it is impossible to die during training, because students are protected by higher beings. Even if he dies fighting, he will be immediately returned to the starting point. And the main condition for acquiring the skill is to defeat the demonic dragon. After 36 seconds, the system will count a draw. In this case, a new level and skills will not be obtained. Defeat will be counted when the player dies. For security purposes, a 10 meters radius safe zone has been created. Hiroto is recommended to rest in this area for the sake of mental health. Then a weapon appeared next to him. The system told him that it possessed this weapon. His chance of winning is no longer 0. And this blade has special skills. This horseradish is capable of cutting anything. But the demonic dragon is an exception. Hiroto needs to make good use of his time. After that, his training was completed. The system didn't tell him anything else. Hiroto looked at this strange blade with bewilderment and said that the chances were no longer 0. So, it turns out that his opponent is the demonic dragon that caused this disaster, isn't it? And besides, this sword is capable of cutting anything. But dragon scales are an exception. He looked in the reflection of this blade and saw himself in it. Hiroto was very scared right now. He said he felt it wouldn't end well. He touched himself and thought he had an immortal body, didn't he? And a blade that can cut through everything, right? If what the system told him was really true, then with a good plan, he would be able to defeat the demonic dragon. However, will he really be able to do it? Maybe he won't do anything and just stay in the safe zone, and then he'll just come back to that hell, isn't it? He slapped his cheeks and said, what a stupid thought. He still doesn't understand what kind of app it is, but thanks to him, he will be able to raise his level and get a lot of skills. After all, he wanted to become stronger from the very beginning. Hiroto got to his feet and took this blade. He caught himself thinking that he still wants to become stronger, he wants to gain strength. And this demonic monster is the key to acquiring his power. Hiroto picked up the blade that the system provided him with, after which he confidently ran out of this radius. The demonic dragon was already waiting for him. He wanted to trample him with his huge paw, but Hiroto managed to run out of that place. Just why he jumped on the paw of this monster. Hiroto jumped up, and at that moment the demonic dragon opened its mouth, and Hiroto jumped right in. Hiroto was now inside this demonic dragon. He already looked rather shabby, but he thought that everything was going well according to his plan. Now he has an immortal body, the spawn of the new ones, which is able to cut anything, but is not able to cut the scales of this demonic dragon. And only one answer to this question is imposed. Hiroto must attack the demonic dragon from the inside. But there was something he couldn't predict. When Hiroto got into the stomach of the demonic dragon, there was his gastric juice, which became burned through his body. His skin began to peel off, and as a result, only bones remained. But even this turned out to be no problem, since Hiroto had an immortal body. This demonic dragon had a very strong stomach juice. The pain was simply unbearable. At first, Hiroto's body could not move, but after a while, he was still able to move. His body was constantly melting, theirs was being restored again, and there was no end to this teaching. He can't even open his eyes, and it was unbearably painful. And what should he do? It's only been a few minutes, hasn't it? But Hiroto felt like it had been a very long time. But he needs to act faster. He doesn't care anymore because he's running out of time. But why? And at that moment, and now, why does he always choose the most difficult path? This is probably because Hiroto is very hungry for power. And what do they want to tell him by this? After all, he just wanted to be on par with Yuzuki, didn't he? No, that's not what he wanted. He wanted her not to think he was weak. That's why he can't stop. Hiroto gathered his strength and grabbed his blade again. After all, he can't stop halfway. He swung and hit the monster from the inside. At the moment, a demonic dragon was flying across the sky. He felt something strange in his stomach. After that, he himself began to experience wild pain. And yet Hiroto managed to cut the belly of this demonic dragon. The demonic dragon fell to the ground, and Hiroto got out of it. He was released and recovered again. He was sent an information window in which it was written that the limit of the development of hunter skills had been reached. A new skill was acquired. A bonus was obtained for killing a divine dragon. The demon lord is gluttony. The divine dragon was defeated. The demonic dragon was absorbed by the demon lord app. Hiroto's strength has increased by 10. The movement has begun. It returns to its original location. Hero otters are always brave and strong. Hiroto said that then he would also be a hero on the next task. And he, addressing Yuzuki, told her that she would be a white magician. Yuzuki objected to him and asked why she always had to play as a healer. Hiroto pointedly turned away from her and told her that fighting was a man's business. And besides, also in the game, he doesn't want her to get hurt. And now, when Yuzuki thinks about it, Hiroto said such a phrase. Hiroto was very embarrassed, and Yuzuki started giggling. Hiroto told her that he wasn't just talking about games. In case of any danger, he will always protect her. Yuzuki thought that when Hiroto told her that, she was very happy. And then time passed. Now everyone was clinging to Yuzuki. They asked, and in some cases, they ordered her to save them, so that she would protect them, because she is the defender of all mankind. The role she was assigned was just like the hero in the game. And at that moment, Yuzuki said that it would be better if she was a white magician. But you can't explain this to people. They still reached out to her for help, called her a hero, and said that they were completely safe with her. They prayed that she wouldn't leave. After all, she must protect them. And Yuzuki couldn't do anything about it, because the lives of so many people depend only on her. And even at such a moment, Yuzuki still continued to fight. The healer, theirs was already dead. And the sorceress, too. And Yuzuki was already running out. She held on with the last of her strength, because a sense of duty was above all. She exhaled and thought that at the cost of the lives of all her guys, she was able to defeat only one Black Knight. But there was not one or even two of them there. There was a whole army of these Black Knights. Yuzuki's legs and arms were shaking from fatigue. She bowed her head and asked that wasn't she a hero. Yuzuki started to panic. She said she couldn't beat them. Now it's definitely over, after which she lost consciousness. Yuzuki knew she couldn't get out of here. After all, to sit for days, now you've eaten a whole army of the strongest Black Knights. She was the only one left, and she needs to make a decision. Does she have to do something? Well, what is it? Why are her hands shaking so much? That's how. Now she is experiencing the most real fear. Although before, no matter how difficult the battle was, she had never been afraid of anything. She has always been the likeness of the hero that others wanted to see. She's always been like this. She dropped her sword from her hands and thought she was, but really, she fell to her knees, and at that moment one of the Black Knights attacked her. Yuzuki started crying and said that let someone save her. One who she thought of was Hiroto. Then there was a bang. It was Hiroto. He came to the aid of his childhood friend, and with his foot he pierced the chest of one of the Black Knights. Everyone started looking at him. Yuzuruki immediately remembered that one, little Hiroth, who told her that when she was scared, she should call him, and then he would save her. And now she was watching him deal with an entire army of these Black Knights. And she thought, where did he get so much strength from? How could he be so strong, even with F-rank abilities? Why? Why is he so strong? Why? This question never left Yuzuki's mind. However, in an instant, all her doubts were dispelled. At that moment, she felt calm. She told Hiroto that if he was so strong, then why didn't he come here earlier? Hiroto looked at her and smiled and asked her for forgiveness. He told her he was in as much of a hurry as he could. She has to be patient a little more, because now everything will be over soon. He activated his skill called Ferocious Divine Dragon. Now he was on par with these Black Knights. He easily cut all these knights with his new blade. And he caught himself thinking that he had a feeling that he was cutting a cake. They can't resist him in any way. After all, now he surpasses them in strength. He looked back and looked at the whole army of dead knights and thought that he had dealt with so many enemies in just a few seconds. What kind of program is this? Then Yuzuki called out to him. She told him it was the end. The end of milking enemies and for allies. Hiroto told her that all the adventurers on this floor had died and there was no way to change that. And I asked her what about the people on the upper floors? Yuzuki showed him the crystal and told him it was a communication crystal. This is a very useful artifact for communication in dungeons, but no one is responding to this communication crystal. And that means, but then Hiroto interrupted her and said firmly that no, there must be another survivor. They were in the same group, and her name is Murano. He went to the place where he left her in a safe place, as he thought. He told her to wait for him, but she was nowhere to be found. And the body was not visible either. Hiroto was terrified, and when he calmed down a little, he asked if she had been kidnapped. He had heard that goblins usually kidnap women. She's nowhere to be found. They have to find her, otherwise it may be too late. And he asked Yuzuki if she would help him. Yuzuki said that, of course, she would help him. If there is a survivor, then they have to save her. And it's best to stick together. He can rely on her. None of them expected what they saw. Murano was dead. The many swords of these Black Knights pierced her body. If a person saves something, then he necessarily loses something. Though why do you always have to be good people? Hiroto remembered that Murano had suggested to him that when he returned, she could treat him to coffee, and he will definitely like it. A lot of people die in the dungeons. Hiroto tightened his grip on his sword. He was just furious. He screamed and rushed to mercilessly kill all the remaining Black Knights. Yuzuki tried to shout to him, but it was useless because he couldn't hear anyone anymore. He escaped with, "You killed all the Black Knights." After all, the same thing happened when he first went to the dungeon. And as a result of the monster attack, 271 people died and 2 survived. He will definitely remember them all. Hiroto was dealing with the last Black Knight. Yuzuki was crying and trying to reach him, but Hiroto didn't hear anyone right now. He only thought that they were the only ones who survived. They will definitely come home. And then the academy was closed. If they wanted to, they could be transferred to any other school and continue their studies. Or could they start officially working as hunters? In other words, what will happen next? It completely depended on their choice. Now they have already returned to the city and were walking around the city after the interview. Yuzuki stopped and asked the orphan what he would do next. Hiroto thought for a moment and said he had no idea. He had already suffered so much because of these dungeons. And not only from monsters were there people whose hearts were filled with evil. It was their truth that was very terrible. But he doesn't want to give up everything. After all, there were people who should not be forgotten. And as long as he is alive, he will never forget about them and how they lived. Yuzuki said that's how it is. She stopped, calling Hiroto, and asked him to tell her how he became so strong. After all, she wants to become as strong as he is. She doesn't want to be afraid anymore. She asked him what, or maybe it was something that he couldn't even trust her with. Hiroto thought that it wasn't that he didn't trust her. This mysterious power, what should he tell her? Until he finds out about this app. All the best for now, keep it a secret. If the hunter guilds find out about him, then it is unknown how they will deal with him. Even though he has become stronger, there are people in the world that are much stronger. Guild leaders, world-class hunters. And he told her that he couldn't tell her about it yet, until he can protect his loved ones. Yuzuki told him that she had already told him that whatever happened, he could rely on her. Hiroto apologized to her and said that he did not want to unite with anyone yet. Perhaps he could explain everything to her later. In the meantime, let her not tell anyone about it and forget about him. It was very hard for Yuzuki, but she said that she would forget everything related to him. However, let him try to return as soon as possible this time. She said it again. Hiroto told her that as he had already said, he would try to hurry up. They temporarily checked into the hotel. At night, his application was activated again. It was said that an unexpected task had appeared. The Demon Lord has 0 hours 0 minutes 0 seconds left before the start of the trial. A match has been found and the test has started. Hiroto was transported to another place. The system told him that his opponent was the Emperor of Purgatory. The compatibility check of the user and Lucifer has begun. The conditions of victory are the death of one of the opponents. Hiroto was stunned and said that the victory conditions were the death of one of the opponents. The test will begin when both parties agree to the test conditions. Hiroto's opponent was Murano. Both of them were terrified of this situation. The system told them they could kill each other as much as they wanted. 7 days ago, when Hiroto found Murano dead. At that moment, Murano launched the same application as Hiroto. She got to the place where she was supposed to fight Hiroto. She asked that where is she? The system notified her that she had received a new skill called Rising Star. The Lord of Purgatory is Lucifer, and the connection with him is established. Murano didn't understand what was going on. She asked that Lucifer in the Morning Star. Is this referring to the Demon Lord Lucifer? Then a new system alert appeared under it, in which it was said that the hunt for the Demon Lord was already beginning. We need to have fun and kill each other. Murano asked what to kill. At that moment, Hiroto began to appear. Both of them were surprised to see each other. After all, Hiroto was sure that she had already died a long time ago. Murano said exactly the same. She died from those nights. But what is it? She has such a strange feeling. The hunt for the Demon Lord and some strange murders. Hiroto was also very scared and asked the girl what by chance she doesn't know about the Demon Lord app. Murano immediately remembered something about her app and asked Hiroto what he was about that strange app on the phone. Hiroto immediately tensed up and asked her if she really had it too. Murano started screaming and asked him what it was. If he knows about it, he should tell her what's going on here. Meanwhile, some men were watching their conversations. An elderly man came into the conference room, and I asked the others about the coefficients. Murano's was 22.0. Hiroto's was 1.1. The man asked what a man could be more popular. The man scratched his beard and said they were just talking. Somehow everything is too calm for them. He thinks they should get involved in this, and if it doesn't help, then they should get into their heads. Meanwhile, Hiroto apparently tried to explain everything to Murano. Murano said it was very hard for her to believe. Hiroto said he didn't believe it himself, but thanks to this app, he became incredibly strong. But he did. But Murano interrupted him and asked him what. However, what does this hunt for the Demon Lord mean? Why do they have to fight each other at all? And this bonus, Hiroto said that in his experience, at first they don't die when defeated. And he asked what was really wrong with her. Murano said she was going to kill another. Hiroto thought about it and thought that he and Murano had different initial skills and they also had different resurrection conditions. Are their apps really different from each other? But he thinks it's useless to think about it now. And he said out loud that last time the draw was counted after 1 hour. He suggests that she wait for the end of time. Then at that moment Murano's notification came, in which it was said that there was no time limit. The trials will end only after the death of one of the participants, and Hiroto received a room in which it was written that there was no draw rule in this test. Then someone shot at them. This shot damaged the earlobes of 2 participants. The 2 of them grabbed their ear and started writhing in pain. Hiroto received a warning saying that the waiting time had already run out. Therefore, a punishment was imposed. Hiroto looked at his hand, which had blood on it, and asked what it meant that it was a punishment, and wasn't it? Don't they have any other choice? Did something start happening to them here? Hiroto was in a panic. He asked what it was. What's happening? The same thing happened with Murano, after which she said that's right, they have no other choice. So she would kill him. The people who were watching them connected Murano to themselves. Now she was doing what they told her to do, or rather, what they sent in system alerts. That's why the girl said there was no other choice. That's why she would kill him. Hiroto tried to contradict her and asked that why she, but then he was subdued. Therefore, he said that she was not right, they had no other choice. That's why he's going to kill her, too. For a while, they just stood and looked at each other. One decided to attack Murano. She pushed off from the ground and, jumping up, used her skill called Rising Star. She almost hit Hiroto, but he managed to jump away. She left a huge hole in the floor. Hiroto thought that if she had hit him like that, then it would definitely not have been without injuries. After that, Murano attacked him again, but Hiroto managed to put a block in time. Hiroto thought that, but he wouldn't give her that luxury. Own movements, excellent spear skills. He admits that her training was not in vain. But at some point he grabbed her by her spear and said that they were still on different levels with her. Therefore, she must surrender to him. Hiroto thought she was very weak. She was too weak. Just like him. At that time, so did Yuzuki. At that moment, Hiroto was able to recover. He thought, what is going on here? Why did he and Murano suddenly start fighting to the death? Were they able to subdue him again? But Hiroto tried to recover faster this time. He clutched his head and thought that it was impossible. You can't let them consume you. He took all the will in his fist and hit himself in the face. Great, he was able to recover after all. Now he had to get Murano out of his trance as well. Did he ask her to listen? When he realized that she would not listen to him, he asked her for forgiveness and then hit her in the stomach. He hit her so hard that she bounced several meters away. And she fell. Murano got up and came to her senses and said, Hiroto, that he should forgive her. Then a new system alert came in which it was said that they should kill each other enough. They both received the same alert. Hiroto said he refuses to do it. He would never agree to such a thing. Murano also said that she refuses to do it. After that, all these alerts were deleted. They received a title called the Rebel. They also received a bonus for receiving this title. It was a skill called Target. Another bonus was received for getting the title. It was a skill called Runaway. Hiroto looked very surprised and asked, what is the Rebel? But against whom? He tried to drive away these thoughts and said that no, it's not so important now. His main problem is these skills. Murano got the same as Hiroto. Hiroto called out to Murano and asked if they had also given her a title and skills. Murano looked at these notifications as if hypnotized and said that she had received the title of Rebel. And she also got skills called Target and Fugitive. Well, what should they do with them? Hiroto thought that it meant she had the same thing. Well, if so, Hiroto, what were you thinking about? And then turned back to Murano. He asked her what? How about committing suicide? Murano looked dumbfounded and asked, what is suicide? Hiroto said he didn't want to kill her. Murano said the same thing and doesn't want to kill him either. Hiroto said that they had already dealt with this, but it was also impossible to sit quietly and wait for his death. It's just his guess, but maybe it doesn't make any sense at all. That is why she is very drawn to suicide. Murano said it was fine. She doesn't fully understand the meaning of this title, but a target and a fugitive. These skills. Hiroto bent down to pick up Murano's spear, and he said that these skills are given to those who refuse to die in a duel, which means that, most likely, they are needed in order to die in a different way, right? From the very beginning, this whole application worked like some very strange game. Earlier, when he participated in the hunt for the Demon Lord, he was given a clue to a solution that a normal person would never have thought of. And this duel is also part of the game. More and more windows with notifications popped up during their conversation. It turns out that someone imposed his will on them. And if you put it all together, then someone is behind this application. And are they betting on them now? But he's not afraid of them. Murano was scared and asked what it meant. Hiroto stood up with her spear and said that it meant that this title and skills were given to them for something. And, perhaps, there is some hint hidden in the name of these skills. In other words, it's some kind of message, that they might escape. Hiroto held out her spear and Murano, taking it away, asked that they could escape. Hiroto told her that he didn't have any proof and, to be honest, he wasn't sure about it himself. He looked at the door and said that, but, as a rule, his assumptions always turn out to be correct. Then this door opened. Hiroto and Murano entered there. Hiroto said that who knows what lies ahead. Both of them started the countdown. It started with 782 seconds. Hiroto said that they have very little time, so they should hurry up. They ran together through this dark tunnel. Along the way they met some blades, but since it was dark, they could not see well. Each of them now had a bloody scratch on their face. Punishment was activated. The system asks them to be more attentive in the future. But Hiroto and Murano all ran on, so the unexplored tunnel. The countdown was 512 seconds. Hiroto was level 25 now. HP, he already had very little left. 52 out of 683. His strength was 46, agility 32, endurance 36, spirit 32 and mana 35. Hiroto, because it appeared immediately after he was given the title of rebel. He had an intervention, a level of intervention in the world. It's very interesting, but now is not the time for that. Their HP keeps falling and falling. The punishment was activated again. Murano looked very tired and battered. She said her HP was down by 10%. Then I asked Hiroto, how is he? Hiroto told her that he was definitely not feeling well. They had 501 seconds left. Hiroto thought that their wounds weren't that deep. However, he had already lost a lot of blood. Then Murano told him that maybe they would come back. If you believe these alerts, they will not be punished if they turn back. Hiroto told her that they would come back. And what will they do next? They expect slaughter from them. Murano barely even spoke. She said that of course he was right. But at this rate they both. Here Hiroto interrupted her and said that he sees the light. They can break through. Having gained strength, they went on. They left bloody footprints behind them. Murano was barely hobbling and at some point she almost fell. Hiroto immediately ran up to her and managed to catch her. He told her that there was still quite a bit left. She should not give up. They can't die here, especially in a place like this. He picked her up and carried her on by himself. The punishment was activated again. Hiroto's HP was 3 out of 683. Murano had HP 2 out of 683. And after that it became 1 of 683. Hiroto does not understand at all. He doesn't understand what this app is for. He doesn't understand why the people behind this app are playing with them. But there's no way he's going to die here. The punishment was activated again. Hiroto's HP was now 0 out of 683. For a split second, he even died. But then some kind of power was activated, and his HP increased by 1. Hiroto took a deep breath and shouted loudly. Then, gathering all his last strength, he ran. Eventually they were able to get out of this tunnel. The system notified them that both participants were able to leave the combat arena. Players get new titles. The title was called Rebel Against the World. The man who commanded the whole organization asked if 421 couples had escaped. They haven't had this for a long time. A guy came up to him from behind and asked him if he was sure it was the right decision. The chief asked what he meant by that healing, didn't he? He doesn't see any problems. They only healed their wounds that they received back in the arena. If both sides do not want to achieve, then they do not lose HP either. Therefore, it is quite logical to restore them. The man asked that wasn't there interference against the rules. The chief said that they would start with the fact that they started the Bitsa only because of their intervention. It's unfair of them to ignore this oversight. After all, this contradicts the purpose of the game. The old people would obviously be unhappy. After this ordeal, the two of them returned to the hotel room. Hiroto sat on the edge of the bed and sorted out his phone. Murano decided to take a shower. Hiroto sat and looked at his stats. He wondered what kind of application it really was. Hiroto has already reached the maximum level now. His HP was 683 out of 683. MP 253 out of 253. Skill lists also increased. He had skills such as Resistance over level 9, a level 1 fugitive who awakened mana from level 1, Fearlessness and level 9, and a level 1 target. He now had 3 chala, such as the Great Hunter rebelled against the world. He also had an intervention. The level of intervention in the world was 66%. Then Murano came out of the shower. Hiroto was distracted from the phone screen and asked her what about her wounds. Murano said she looked herself up and down and everything was like his. Not a single scratch. Hiroto thought that the rebels against the world. So also some strange indicator has appeared, which is called interference in the world, which is 66%. Hiroto looked very puzzled. He thought it all had something to do with each other. But nothing like this has ever happened before. Murano sat down next to him. She called the orphan and told him that this is what she thinks. If there's someone behind this app, is he really that bad? Hiroto asked her if she really thought he was kind. Murano, without raising his head, said that they were able to escape, even though they were on the verge of death. Doesn't that mean they were initially given a chance to avoid a fight? And he, too, seemed ready for their tricks. How did you read about something like this in a manga? There was an organization that staged a massacre between a bunch of people with questionable backgrounds. But they believed in their humanity to the last. And as long as the players didn't break the rules, they had a chance to survive. Everything was conceived in such a way that in the end only the organizers themselves had to die. In the manga, everyone spat on the rules and behaved like they were rolling, which only increased the number of deaths, and the ending even makes you want to cry. Hiroto picked up his phone again, and he told Murano that he thinks that this application does not belong to the category of cute stories. It was already night. Yuzuki was lying alone in a hotel room. An empty window appeared in front of her. She looked at it and thought that this window is still very similar to the game menu. And why do only S-rank people see it? But then something came up. It was an urgent quest called Stalker. It was for the owner of a special version of the application. The goal of this quest was to kill one or two of the above. One target was Ijima Hiroto. The second goal is Ito Murano. The reward for completing this quest was unlocking the store, the internal currency. One kill was equal to 5,000 credits. Description: after 10 days, their exact location will be indicated, after which she will be given 24 hours to kill. It is also recommended to pursue your victims up to this point if she already knows their exact location. Yuzuki was horrified and asked, "What is it?" Then a question followed. What will she accept this quest? The next morning, Hiroto went out to the park. He was talking to Yuzuki on the phone there. At the moment, Yuzuki was in the training center. She asked what this urgent stalker quest is all about. And why exactly is he and Murano? Why would they kill them? Hiroto said he didn't know that either. Yuzuki said that's how it is. Hiroto said they need to repeat what they know. They know that this quest will start in 10 days, and then their location will be revealed, and they will have to survive for 24 hours. And since she refused the quest, it was transferred to another user of this application, wasn't it? Yuzuki confirmed and said that yes, everything is as he said. Hiroto said he wanted to clarify something else. Hunters with rank S can see status windows, and it looks like a game screen, right? Yuzuki said that yes, she sees him and everything is as it was written in the Book of Hunters. Hiroto thought that her status window and his and Murano's app were demon lords. Does it turn out that they see a single application? He said that they say that the quest was handed over to someone. Does she have any idea who it might be? Yuzuki told Hiroto to listen to her. She said that in fact he was somehow involved in all this, wasn't she right? Hiroto said that it was better for her not to know about it yet. Yuzuki said that lately she's starting to understand less and less what's going on around her. Oh well, about the new owner of the quest. She assumes it's the same S rank as her. Few people know about it, but there is a group of people that consists exclusively of S-ranked hunters. They call themselves the Demon Lord Hunters. She's still a student, so she's not suitable for them. Once she had a chance to talk to one of them. He said that they chose such a name because they would be stronger in abilities than any Demon Lord from video games. Hiroto looked very scared and thought that Demon Lord Hunters, the Demon Lord's app, and now the Hunters. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like just a coincidence. Why is this world filled with monsters? Where did these game status windows come from? And what is it? Is this the Demon Lord app? And who are these hunters? And that's probably not all. Now he has no doubts. All these things are interconnected. Then Yuzuki called out to him and asked why he was quiet. Hiroto asked her for forgiveness and again began to think that, finally, S-ranks, who for some reason were dragged into this. Quests that are transmitted exclusively between them killing other hunters, hunting for them. The performers of the quest were called the Stalker of Death, so only one thing is clear. Now he can't reveal his identity or his abilities to anyone, especially if he is being hunted by S-rank. Yuzuki asked him what else, and why did the dead Murano suddenly resurrect? He can't explain it to her, can he? Hiroto asked her forgiveness, making it clear that no, he couldn't. Yuzuki said she understood. Anyway, he wants to get a hunter's certificate, which is considered missing in the dungeon, right? And we need to find someone similar in age and parameters to Murano. Hiroto asked if they had a chance. Yuzuki said she didn't want to talk about it much, but in the dungeons, the rules and laws are left to the hunters themselves. In other words, there are practically no rules. The rulers will turn a blind eye to any dirt, as long as it does not cause harm to the outside world. Therefore, usually in the dungeons, the identity of hunters is found on their own corpses, and it seems that secretly people exchange them for treasures from the dungeons. And I asked him that he was near Machida Station right now, wasn't he? Hiroto said that yes, since he did not know exactly when he would be attacked, he would strengthen his position. Yuzuki told him to send her an address later, where she could hand over the ID. Then she said goodbye to him. They finished their conversation. She exhaled and thought that he hadn't told her anything. Perhaps he thinks that if he finds out the truth, she herself will be in danger. But is it really impossible to rely on her at all? Meanwhile, Hiroto and Murano decided to leave the hotel. Murano said she would be lucky if they could rent 2 neighboring apartments. You can't live in a hotel forever. But is Hiroto sure that everything is fine? He's spent so much money. On the day of his return, he gave her his phone and told her to order everything she needed. Murano was embarrassed and thought that she even had to buy her underwear through his phone. And she also borrowed his shirt. Hiroto stopped and told her not to worry. For that incident in the dungeon, he was not paid a small compensation. Murano said that's how it is, but still she can't sit on his neck forever. Hiroto told her that they were hunters after all. Tomorrow they will go to the dungeon, and she will also be able to earn some extra money. And he himself thought that her skill, if used correctly, was simply deadly. So you don't have to worry about capturing the dungeon. He turned around, apparently wanted to say something to Murano, but did not find her on the spot. Then he saw her looking at stuffed animals. Or rather, she was looking at some crazy soft rabbit. He came closer to her and thought, "What is it?" And I told her that I had to go already. Hiroto said that if they passed through this mall, then. But Murano stopped at another counter where this crazy rabbit was also selling everything. Hiroto started looking around, and I thought that it really is in other stores too. Do people really like this toy? Murano said what a cutie he was. Hiroto asked her if she really wanted her, and he himself thought that at first he was trying to figure out if she was a bad person. Then she seemed very interesting to him. And now it looks like she's pretty weird, right? Still, Hiroto bought her this toy. Murano thanked him to her. Hiroto said that whatever it was, if they pass like this, they will get to the goal faster. Then his phone vibrated. He thought, is this really another call from Yuzuki? But when he took out his phone, he was noticeably strained by what he saw. It was one notification from the Demon Lord app. He received a message from the administrator. Or rather, he received a gift. The sender of this message was Alphagarda, the Lord of Demons in the New World. The poisoner of this message was Ulfgard. He was a demon lord from another world. The recipient was Hiroto. His gift was a two-handed genocide. He was an SS rarity, and the more human blood this sword drinks, the bigger it will become. The next information window was about information about this weapon. It was written in it that the sword itself is very weak, but with each new drop of human blood, it will become stronger and stronger until it reaches the power capable of killing God himself. Hiroto received this item and unlocked the storage function. Now he can open it at any time and place or pull items out of it. Hiroto thought that he understood such a repository, but genocide. A sword that drinks human blood. Then Murano called out to him and asked what was wrong with him. Hiroto said nothing. It's just that this app has really bad taste. At the same time, somewhere in the dungeon. A dungeon that is under the control of hunters from the Artemis Academy. Right now, there was a full-scale battle with these Black Knights. The squad barely coped. Then one of them beat the helmet off one of these knights, and they were convinced that it was the undead. Their wizard used his skill called Sacred Radiance, but it doesn't work out for them because they are not weaklings. The darkness in his soul is too huge, it is simply impossible to clear it. Another sorceress said that the weak point of the undead is fire, and she used her skill called Pillar of Fire. All the Black Knights burned down. They asked, what did they really do? The swordsman said that it took them as many as 5 people to deal with him alone. The guys who held the shield said that all 5 are in rank. The sorceress asked what, but would she have mastered him one-on-one? The man said that now is not the time for jokes. The swordsman said that there might be many more such creatures ahead. But will they be able to cope with a crowd of such if they barely beat one? It's a stretch to call them large guilds, and this is their first assignment to explore the dungeon. It's probably too late to talk about it, but they can't do it alone. Then the sorceress suggested that then maybe they should contact a larger guild. And, for example, ask them for more hunters in the rank. The man said no. Here it is better to immediately call a rank. The swordsman said he wouldn't come out. Do they really think that a rank hunters in the association grow on trees? Even if they call them here, they will never agree. The guy with the shield laughed and said that she was setting their budget too limited to hire such hunters. The swordswoman said that whatever it was, she wanted to rest. An accident in the dungeons is not uncommon, and she does not want to fall into one of them. But a huge monster appeared in front of them, and his armor was not black, but white. This monster was just huge, and fast, too. Hunters of the rank are veterans of their business. They are much stronger from the rank. They are also called first class. Then this giant easily cut their swordswoman in half. But when they saw that white armor, each of them wished to escape from the dungeon. However, they were not given time to escape. Their boss said that they should retreat because they need a rank. No, this requires an S-rank hunter. Then this giant killed this man, too. The giant even allowed me to ask for help. But then some man appeared, and, laughing, said that this means only S-rank can defeat him, right? That man was completely on his mind. He wasn't wearing a single piece of armor, and he didn't even take a weapon with him. In other words, he lived by killing monsters with his bare hands. The monster tried to strike him with his huge axe, but the man delayed the axe blow with his one hand. The wizard said it was amazing. The sorceress said that he defeated him with just one blow. The man grabbed this giant and said that he would squeeze all the guts out of him. But when he tried to clamp it here, something went wrong. He coped with the forces that what? Is he all made up of bones, or what? But that didn't stop him either. He beat him anyway. The sorceress said that, but he killed 2 hunters in rank with 1 blow. Could it have been an accident? The wizard said no, he's just special. Even if he is in rank, but in strength he is no longer inferior to S rank. When he first started, his strength was at the peak of a rank. Perhaps one day he will become the greatest hunter. Hunters who have become S rank themselves, and not at the whim of nature. The man heard their entire conversation and thought that for the most part this guy's words were true. But no matter how strong he was, even he would not be able to defeat this monster with 1 blow. The store is a feature that is only available to S rank. This thing cost him 15,000 credits. There was a necklace around his neck. It was an immortal hero's necklace. The degree of rarity of this necklace was a. This necklace shows a power that is comparable to demonic, as long as there are no weapons in his hands. It adds to the HP plus 10,000. Strength increases by 25. Defense increases by 100. An additional skill of this necklace is demonic melee art, and the price of this immortal necklace was 15,000 credits. Then he had an urgent quest called Stalker. It was for the owner of a special version of the application. The goal of this quest is to kill 1 or 2 of the specified ones. 1 was Hiroto, and 2 was Murano. The reward for completing this quest was unlocking the store and the internal currency. 1 murder equals 5,000 credits. The attentive man stopped looking at this quest. He thought it was an urgent quest, and the target is Ijima Hiroto. If he is not mistaken, then he is one of those who survived the incident with the dungeon. 5,000 credits for the murder of some schoolboy. The reward is even too good, they don't think so. Of course, he accepts this quest. Now he has 20,000 credits, he should see what he can buy. But when he opened the store, he was surprised. On the first place was the Spear of Longinus, which cost 300,000. 2. The weapon was a Manhwa Habari, which cost 200,000. On the third place was the Genocide, which was presented to Hiroto, but he was no longer in this store. The man was obviously very surprised, and he thought that did someone really buy a weapon with the attribute of a killer of gods? One of the best attributes, an S rank that earns enough credits in order to buy a god slayer, is that even possible? Then that guy came up to him and asked if something was really wrong. But the man said no, it's okay, he shouldn't pay attention to him. And he asked that it was an S rank monster, wasn't it? The guy said he believed that was the case. The man said that then his legend would sound quite plausible. Hunters in rank stumbled upon an S rank monster and fell in battle. And only he, as the owner of the power of a rank, was able to overcome the monsters and survive by sacrificing 5 comrades. The dead do not talk, and he will sell all their equipment and clothes profitably. After all, they are first-class hunters. Hunters in rank. The 2 of them were already scared, and the guy asked the man not to joke like that. Even if he did, he would be caught being searched at the entrance to the city, wouldn't he? After all, precisely because of the fact that this has already happened, the government and then this man came up to him and, gagging him, said that on the other hand, he also has a storage skill that allows him to store all his items in his small space. He asked this guy, what, has he never wondered why most of the current S-ranked hunters tell a story about how they miraculously survived in the dungeon, having lost all their comrades? On the streets, these tales are called heroic legends. But no shit like that, because they just killed everyone and robbed them to the skin. And now it was his turn. After all, he tried so hard to collect all this money and equipment for him. Then the man killed this guy. All his hands were covered in his blood. He said that, and now it's time to earn some extra money. This man pushed the sorceress. Then he killed her. He said he was God and judge here, and killing women is the most fun. He named 2 of his goals and said that now it's time to start their merry hunting. The next day, Hiroto and Murano went in search of an apartment. The realtor told them that as she understood, they were looking for an apartment to live together. Hiroto said yes, with 2 rooms. Murano whispered to Hiroto that could he explain to her that it was just a misunderstanding. Hiroto told her that was what he had planned. The realtor, having studied all the papers, said that they had only 60,000 yen for a total of 30,000 per room. It's not even close to the current market prices. They are a couple, so maybe it's better for them to pick up a 1-bedroom apartment. Murano was very confused, and Hiroto is a beginner level 1 housing finder. Hiroto said that even if it would be cheaper, he thought that. Murano was still confused and asked if she and Hiroto really had to live in the same room. Then Yuzuki came up from behind in surprise. She even dropped her bag. She asked what to live in 1 room. She asked Hiroto for forgiveness for what she overheard. From a security point of view, she understands why they should live together, but sleeping in the same room is already too much. Doesn't he understand that? Hiroto told her that they weren't going to. Yuzuki walked up to him and handed him a package. She said that here is what he asked for, and she also took the liberty and bought an item of one necessity for Ito. Murano was very pleasant, but I will thank him Yuzuki for that. Yuzuki was about to leave, but decided to say something to Hiroto anyway. She told him that she had already accepted that he was hiding something from her, but she's not going to measure up to a lie. If he's going to use her as a girl in love with uncles, then she won't be silent. She said everything. The realtor stood silently all this time. She thought that she was like on a battlefield. Hiroto asked Yuzuki to wait a bit, but she did not listen to him and left. After that, Hiroto and Murano went to another place. Hiroto said that the misunderstanding seemed to have been resolved. But still, why be so angry? Murano wondered if she was really angry because of the lie. She looked at Hiroto and thought that maybe she and Yuzuki felt the same way. Hiroto looked at her and asked if something was wrong. Murano was embarrassed and said that there was nothing wrong, he should not pay attention. And she thought that now their main priority is not to catch the eye of the stalker of death. Hiroto was thinking at the time that, in other words, he and Murano should avoid all S-rank holders. Wherever they hide, their location will be revealed when the timer reaches 0. So all they have to do is train hard in the hope of fighting back against this stalker. He has F rank, and he is already at level 25, which is his maximum. So he has already reached his maximum level. But kill new types of monsters, he will become stronger due to the skill of his gluttony. On the other hand, Murano doesn't have this skill, but she did not reach the maximum level. She has an E rank. Her maximum level is 35. But Hiroto doesn't know what her current level is. And besides, Murano's combat skills are well honed. The only reason she failed to injure the Minotaur is because she lacks the very force of the blow. She masterfully compensates for the lack of talent with honed skills. If they add that skill to everything, then Murano will not only compensate for his weaknesses, but he may well fight monsters with a rank higher than hers, so its level will grow by leaps and bounds. Murano said that after all, there is no dungeon in the world where you can quickly upgrade your level. Hiroto said that it's true to eat, they want to level her up quickly, then they should focus on dungeons with high-level monsters. However, for security reasons, only F-rank dungeons are available to beginners like them. They started looking for the right dungeon. After finding the dungeon they were interested in, they opened the note. In the note it was written that low-level goblins live in the dungeon. But recently there has been a critical increase in their numbers. If there is a magician in the party with large-scale attacking spells, even beginners of F rank can pass the dungeon. The orphan, after reading all this, said that these were not the best conditions. Murano asked if they hadn't managed to change the dungeon rank yet. After all, it usually takes 1 month to change the dungeon rank from F2E. Hiroto said they should get back to business. They have two options. One, it is a secret to infiltrate one of the dungeons controlled by the Association of Hunters of a higher rank. It's illegal, so he would have rejected that option. And option 2, here it is. Murano said it was the same. Then the man who was supposed to kill them came into the same building. Hiroto said there was one option. He found a suitable dungeon. It was a dungeon, the Gate of Azabu C1. The main opponent of this dungeon were beastmen. The difficulty of the dungeon was B restriction. The entrance is only available to F-rank hunters. A tip was also given, in which it was said that there are a lot of minerals in this dungeon, so they should not forget to bring a porter with them. Murano said they didn't have a porter. The porter is responsible for carrying luggage inside the dungeon. Hiroto told her that this dungeon has already been cleared and no one really goes there. Now it's more of a local magic ore mine, where only porters and their guards go. Murano said he was loyal. In addition, all the treasures originally that were in the dungeon have already been taken out. But if they want to raise the level, then that means they have to take on the role of guards, right? There's no choice, so you'll have to hire a porter, won't you? Hiroto smiled at her and said that there were no rules that forbid a porter to defend himself on his own. At that moment, the man who was hunting for Hiroto and Murano came into this place. He thought that still, if he didn't constantly explore a new dungeon, then he wouldn't be able to raise his rank. What a hassle it is. But he has no choice, he will have to take on new assignments again. Then a man called out to him. He called him Mr. Tomova. Tomova looked at this guy with bewilderment and asked what. This guy told him he was just amazing. He managed to clean up an entire dungeon by himself. He was even given the rank of hunter as a special exception. Tomova asked what is the rank of a, and that he needs to fill out some papers for this. The guy told him that no, the vice president and their association would contact him very soon and discuss all the details with him. Tomova asked that the vice president. The guy said that the fact that he personally wants to talk to him means that he is recognized as a national treasure. After all, this is not a joke. Of course, they will treat him differently now. If he had received their S rank certificate, they would even have organized a press conference and officially announced it publicly. At this point, Tomova stopped listening to him and grinned, thinking what it means now he is a national treasure of a rank. The settler has reached this rank for a long time, so why not get an official confirmation? Hiroto and Murano went to that dungeon together. Then they heard some kind of showdown. One guy was run over and asked him what he had done. Weren't they supposed to hire porters anyway, so why aren't they girls? Did he even write in the request that he needed girls? This guy apologized and said that if he had written such a thing, no one would have come to them at all. The man who pushed him said that it was fine. Then he approached Murano and said that he had brought at least one cutie. Still, he's good. And I asked her that she was an F-rank hunter after all. Such bugs are completely useless in battle. Well, at least there is something to admire. He pointed his finger at Hiroto and said that, but he was of no use at all. He will only get half of the reward. The guy he pushed got up and told him not to overdo it. If he pushes like that, they won't find any more porters at all. The man said that okay, fuck it. Well, if there is no use from a guy, then a girl will work for him. If she doesn't want them to cut her partner's reward, then she should be obedient and do whatever they say. Hiroto was about to say something, but Murano grabbed his hand and whispered to him not to get involved in an argument with them. This man apparently heard what she said to him and said that she was thinking fast. Murano said that she did not say that she agreed to this. If they do not calm down, she will file a complaint against them to the association. Did they understand? The man told her to relax because they were joking, although he wasn't kidding when he said they were useless bugs. And they should remember, if they get bored with him, there may be a couple more missing persons in the dungeons. They're new, they must not know about the lawlessness inside the dungeon, right? Recently, the number of crimes is only growing. It's better not to anger anyone. Then their boss came up to him and told him to finish. After all, it's time to earn extra money. Together, they headed to the dungeon. Immediately, they encountered monsters, with whom they began to fight. These hunters had a C rank. They are very experienced, so they won't have any problems in battle. But their habits, Hiroto, even out of politeness, cannot call them normal. At that moment there was a collapse. The ceiling began to collapse. Someone asked, "What is going on here?" The other guy told everyone to follow him. Hiroto took Murano's hand and asked her if she was alright. Murano said yes. He thanked him. Then they heard some howling. It was the Infernal Guardian. In another way they were called Cerberus. They were of S rank. Their boss asked what Cerberus was doing here. Doesn't this dungeon have difficulty in? He thought it was very bad. He looked at Hiroto and Murano and thought that he should use these guys as bait. Maybe he can at least survive. At that moment, Hiroto took out his sword. He is one by one that the name of this sword is genocide. And in the description it was said that he feeds on human blood and becomes stronger from it. This is another trick of the system. But how much power does he have now? Well, he will learn this in practice. But how much power is there in this sword now? Hiroto decided to find out in practice. But then he thought about it and lowered his sword, said that no, if he showed all his real strength now, he would become a bait. So he told everyone to grab Murano and run away from here. Their leader said it was clear, so he decided to sacrifice himself for her protection. Then he grabbed Murano by the arm and dragged him along. Murano said that she doesn't like all this, she will also fight. But their boss kept dragging her along and said they should leave faster. Hiroto looked after the departing Murano and asked her thoughts for forgiveness, saying that even if they came here in order to pump her level. However, the current one is not his equal. Hiroto was left alone. He thought there were no witnesses now, so now he can give his all. This Cerberus was very huge. And what a huge speed he has. Hiroto tried to injure Cerberus, but he didn't succeed, and this gives him just terrifying strength. There wasn't even a scratch on Cerberus. He's definitely stronger than those Black Knights. But that's why. Can't he give me a try? He took out his weapon and activated the skill of this sword. He activated the level 1 God Slayer skill. Cerberus was dead. Hiroto cut him in half. He wondered how many weapons there were inside the system. He would never have thought that the sword was so strong. The system notified him that he had received a new skill. This skill was called the Demon Lord of Gluttony. This skill gives him plus 5 points to the strength indicator. Hiroto grinned and looked at this sword, thinking that with this he would not lose to anyone. Because of this application, he constantly walks like on the edge of a knife. If you think about it, then the sword was given to him quite recently, this Stalker of Death. Do they mean to say that without a sword he is not his equal? In other words, until he starts absorbing human blood, he has no chance of surviving, does he? Then someone appeared behind him. Hiroto was very surprised. This man asked that this destruction was his handiwork, wasn't it? The man looked at the dead Cerberus and asked Hiroth that it was his handiwork, wasn't it? Hiroto looked very scared and thought, did he really see everything? What should he do now? Maybe he should try to probe him. So he decided to say that his name is Ijima Hiroto. And I asked the men what and is how. The man said that it was definitely rude to ask questions without even introducing himself. He apologized for that and said his name was Murakami Shingo, and he's an S-rank hunter, and now he takes the 4th place in the rating of hunters. Hiroto was really scared now. He asked, what is a hunter of S-rank? And I thought that the stalker of death should be one of the S-rank. And he got the worst possible option. Murakami Shingo took out his ID card from his inside pocket and handed it to Hiroto. Hiroto looked at him questioningly. Murakami Shingo asked that he was one of the novice hunters, wasn't he? Usually, when you meet an unfamiliar person in the dungeon, they show their IDs to each other as a greeting sign. Hiroto picked up his ID. His name was written there, and that he is 48 years old. He is an S-rank hunter. His strength level is a Hiroto thought that, according to Yuzuki, this screen is visible only to those whose strength index reaches S-rank. And this means that he has nothing to do with the Stalker of Death. After that, Hiroto told Murakami Shingo that he was now his and reached for his ID. But Murakami Shingo beat him to it and asked him that he had a hunter's strength level of F, didn't he? He himself is not too favored among the S-rank. But his situation is even worse. And, by the way, who is the culprit of this devastation? Hiroto, terrified, decided to say that there was another person here. He saved him from Cerberus and escaped. And he thought it was good that he didn't say too much, although his legend looks very stupid. Murakami Shinku, apparently, believed him, said that it was clear, so this was another work of X, wasn't it? Hiroto asked, what is X? Murakami Shingo told him not to take it into his head. It's a very long story. Hiroto asked him what the S-rank hunter was. How did he forget in such a simple dungeon? Murakami Shingo asked him what he knew about the Artemis Hunter Training Academy. In truth, there have been quite a few monster incidents since they were all almost slaughtered. She kept hinting that the same thing would happen soon in this dungeon, so he decided to conduct his own investigation. Hiroto tensed and asked what was his own, but Murakami Shingo told him to forget about it, because it's also a very long story. It's better for him not to know the details. Hiroto said that's how, but then he'd better go. But that Murakami Shingo called out to him again. Hiroto turned around and asked if he needed something. Murakami Shingo said that fate brought them together here. This dungeon became part of a chain of incidents, and here appeared monsters, which in principle should not be here. He should not misunderstand him, but it is better to refrain from conquering the dungeons for now. After all, the case smells fried. Hiroto thanked him for his advice. After he moved further away, he opened his stats again. Now his agility was 35, stamina 36, and spirit 32 and mana 35. He thought he didn't even need to look at the warning from the system. That's what S-rank hunters are, right? They're just real monsters. And yet, he is still too weak. Murakami Shingo bent down to look at the crack in the dungeon and thought that everything was as usual. Traces of an unknown hunter of or S-rank. In other words, X exists. And it suddenly turned out to be an ordinary kid. No, it can't be. In order to destroy the landscape, you need to have at least level A for level F. This is impossible, under no circumstances. Meanwhile, the association has assembled a council. 3 men were sitting at a round table. One of them was the chairman of the Hunters Association, whose name was Oyamata Ghostsu. He is ranked 3rd in the S rating, the strength level of hunter of the old generation. 2 was the 2nd in seniority, the head of the Kasa Guild, whose death is called Murakami Shingo. He is ranked 4th in the ranking. He also belongs to the old generation. 3 by seniority, the head of the Black Dragon Fangs Guild was Tsuyoshi Omichi. He is ranked 5th in the S Hunters ranking. His strength level is also a. He also belongs to the old generation. They knocked on their door. Oyamata told him to come in. The guests of the guild entered. He was a representative of the largest company in the entertainment industry. His name is Takato. He is ranked 2nd in the S rating, and he belongs to the younger generation. Takato greeted everyone and said that they were there to finish the drama, which is why he was late. Oyamata asked if the title of hunter meant anything to him. Takato sat down on a chair and said that he could speak frankly with his finances. This title is a good way to always stay on the wave of popularity. Does he disagree with him? Oyamata became angry. Murakami Shingo tried to calm him down. Oyamata couldn't stand it and said that damn, another asshole. And one in the ranking never appears at their meetings at all. Young people are no good nowadays. The Hunters Association, no, not even that. Who does he think he is? Takato, without thinking, said that Grumpy Grandpa. Isn't that right? Oyamata was seething with anger. Murakami Shingo clutched his head and told the chairman that he would lecture him later. Do they all have other things to do? So, they will start a conference of S-rank hunters, and the Demon Lord is on their agenda. Takato asked, what is the Demon Lord? The chairman said that to be more precise, the conversation would turn to the hunters of the lords. Now Takato understood what they were talking about, and said that they had gathered because of their group of S-rank, and he thought it was about the application of the Demon Lord. The chairman asked for applications. Takato said that these are very long stories, he doesn't need to listen to her. The chairman started getting angry again and asked him if he really wanted to say that they had created a special application for themselves and distributed it by hand. Takato said it was something like that. And I asked the chairman, so what? They'd better talk about the old parliament building. The chairman asked him what he thought about where Nagato's dungeon opened. Didn't he? Takato said yes. As they all already know, this is one of the 7 great dungeons. The chairman said that they sent their hunters from all over the world to them, but no one has managed to conquer them. One of the 7 great dungeons has opened in America, and the resulting tragedy engulfed the whole of New York. In Japan, the great dungeon swallowed up the parliament building. The honor of their country is at stake. This expedition must not fail. And he heard rumors that they were the younger generation, began to act behind their backs. They should not forget that the expedition is headed by the management of the Association of Hunters. Takato said that God, okay, he would tell the others about it. However, he called the chairman Grandpa again, and said that he was just very interested. Maybe they were jealous of them, so they were finding fault. 10 years ago, out of nowhere, a talented S-rank hunter also appeared, who took 2nd place in the ranking. And at the very top is Tsuyako Kyujo. Murakami Shingo said that she is the main hunter, and she has never appeared at meetings. From this young generation of hunters who live on their own minds, he begins to have a headache. Whatever it was, but they should all moderate their selfishness. Don't underestimate the Hunters Association. Takato rolled his eyes and said yes, yes. Omichi turned to the chairman, said that, by the way, what about the Artemis Hunter School? The chairman told him that he was very sorry about the death of his son, but the investigation into his death was terminated. They've already discussed it. Omichi's father asked the chairman what he wanted to say, that all the shadows controlled by monsters simply disappeared from the face of the earth. He taught him to run in unforeseen situations, being an S-rank hunter. He raised him from childhood. He understands what that means, doesn't he? He even gave him a special artifact that signals dangerous monsters. He had every chance to escape. He couldn't die so easily. It wasn't monsters that killed him, and it was people. That's why he couldn't escape. Takato asked him what he thought about the incident where only 2 survived. Well, suppose he's right. But then his son's killers have been in the grave for a long time, haven't they? Omichi was still very angry and asked the chairman if this was really the reason for the association not to continue the investigation. If that's the case, then he'll do it himself. The chairman asked what himself. Omichi said that, after all, there is no use from the Hunters Association. Therefore, it is not surprising that such a small crowd wipes their feet on them. He got up and said that first he would try to find out more about those 2 survivors, and he himself thought that the artifact that he gave him was worth hundreds of millions of yen. His son was killed before he even met a slightly dangerous monster, he is sure of it, and their target was his expensive equipment. If the culprits are still alive, then he will definitely find out about it, and personally kill them all. The dungeon, which was formed on the site of the former Academy for Hunters of Artemis, 4 investigative building. Hiroto and Murano went there together. Murano asked Hirota not to leave her like last time. Hirota apologized to her and said he was to blame, and he himself thought that there were only 6 days and 12 hours left before the appearance of the Stalker of Death. After that, they followed the group into this dungeon. Murano said that she would never have thought that she would return to this dungeon again. Hiroto said that he didn't want to come back here himself, but this is the best option if they want to get pumped as soon as possible. And one of the reasons for their return is that after that incident, a large variety of monsters were seen here. And the other reason is that it is the Black Knight living in the depths of the dungeon. Hiroto will kill more new monsters and upgrade his skills, and Murano will be pumped, and then they will start hunting the Black Knight together. Hiroto stopped and told her that for now they would behave like ordinary porters, and then they would prepare the time and separate from the group. Murano agreed with him, and he said that they were going to spend 5 days in the dungeon. Do they have enough provisions? Hiroto said that's enough because he has a vault. He thought that he had conducted various experiments with it and found out that it only fits about 2 kilograms. So also the time in the storage practically does not go. Therefore, you don't have to worry about the safety of provisions. He told her that he had bought somewhere for 500,000 yen. It would be enough for their eyes. Murano was very surprised and asked, "What's for 500,000 yen?" Hiroto said they practically wasted half of their compensation. Let at least 2/2 fill their stomach. Murano thought that if you think about it, then Hiroto is still a snack lover, even though you can't tell it from him. Hiroto thought that as long as they stayed on top of someone's head, there was a high probability that they would have to hide in the woods or even flee the country altogether. Then the guy turned to them and asked them to apologize for that story with Cerberus. Hiroto recognized this guy and said that, and he's from that time, right? The guy said that everyone, including him, survived. Well, all that ends well. Now they decided to have a snack. These 3 were followed by 2 of these men. The guy said that the preparation is going smoothly, but is he sure about it? The leader said that he met a couple of S-rank hunters, and they used the same skill as him. At first there was a void, and then a strange sword turned out to be in his hands. It seems that the old man helped him to cope with Cerberus, and Murakami is from S-rank. He took out this weapon only when his life and that woman's life were at stake. From which side not to look at this month is clearly unusual. The man said that even if he says so, isn't it just his gut feeling? The leader said that judging by the shape and how he got it, he can guarantee that it is something very powerful. This is a great reason to kill and rob him anyway. It will be considered another accident. Anyway, there are already hundreds, if not 1,000 stolen swords in the world. Is this guy just an F rank? A porter is nothing more than a small fry. And what happens to people like him? They are being killed, and this is natural. Hiroto said it was a coincidence after all. They went to the dungeon again as a group. The guy said that this time the job should be safe, but well paid. Hiroto said that their task now is to set up a camp at intermediate levels. The guy said that it looks like someone is determined to explore this place inside and out. Although the outside has already confirmed that the dungeon is completely safe, so it is unlikely that he will die. Hiroto asked him if he didn't find everything too simple somehow. The guy said that the most dangerous thing in this place is a group of rank hunters. Now they are exploring the lower floors. In the last incident, a lot of hunters in the rank died here, so prices have jumped. So also the goals of their assignment are in the safest area. And since their task is to protect them, the porters, they will get a huge jackpot for killing a couple of weak monsters. They will reach the middle levels, set up a camp for explorers of the depths, and then you can leave. This is a 5-minute question. Hiroto thought that if the rumors were to be believed, then the most interesting thing was happening in the depths of this dungeon. In the previous incident with the dungeon, Cerberus appeared out of nowhere, and the cases before him affected this place as well. The tragedy of the hunters of the Artemis Academy. And his most one case is the day he got the app. And all these incidents happen only in the dungeons. But simple, or is it a coincidence? Or did someone set it up? Whatever it was, the main task for them and Murano right now is to survive. And to do this, you need to become stronger, and the dungeon is perfect for this. But what if even their appearance was planned by someone? Then the guy turned to Hiroto and asked what was wrong with him. Hiroto shook his head and said it was nothing. Then they noticed and said that it looked like the halt was over. They need to move out. They moved further down the dungeon and came across monsters. These monsters that looked like huge maggots. It was an underground worm. Its difficulty level was C. The underground worms that were on the ceiling of the dungeon were of the colony's difficulty level plus. Then these underground worms from the ceiling of the dungeon began to fall. Some man shouted that they were coming. People defended themselves with their shields, and the magicians burned them. Here their commander commanded that the neighbors should attack now. These people are experienced hunters with rank. Hiroto looked very thoughtful. Murano was very worried about him. Then one of their squad was attacked by one of the underground worms. But Hiroto took out his little knife and threw it at the worm. The underground worm was dead. This guy looked at the knife and thought, is it really a throwing knife? Where did he come from? Hiroto thought that. But if he met the Black Knight with his current strength, then there would be trouble. Murano told him that people were saying that the Black Knight was only noticed on the lower floors, so there's nothing to worry about yet. Hiroto said that whatever it was, they are already at the middle levels. They must reach the place and leave their part of the materials for the camp there, and slowly separate from the group. Then Murano laughed. Hiroto looked at her questioningly and asked, what is it? Murano winked at him and told him that he took this job so seriously. Hiroto said that well, he was paid in advance, so he should at least do something. Then the guy they were eating with called out to him. He told Hiroto that they were in a little trouble. In this scuffle, one of the group members fell into a crevice, and, most likely, he is injured. There should be healing potions among his luggage, shouldn't there? Will he go with him? Hiroto agreed without hesitation and said that it was fine. Let's go. The three of them went to the crevice, and their leader and his subordinate grinned nastily and watched them. The building of the Hunters Association. Meanwhile, Mr. Tomover received a Hunter's certificate. He took out a card and said that it was a rank Hunter's certificate. The good thing is that he has one trick that will let him know who his target is before the system itself tells him about it. After all, the sooner he kills them, the better it will be. And as long as he knows where this guy is, then he has an advantage. Those who have reached a rank have the right to create their own guild of hunters. In other words, if he is interested in some hunter association, and he wants to invite him to his guild, then he can get any information about him through the database. Well, of course, this means that he is now in the dungeon where the hunters of the Artemis Academy died and performs the role of a porter there. So he found it. Ijima Hiroto. The guy approached Hiroto and said that they had a little trouble in this scuffle. One of the group members fell into a crevice, and, most likely, he was injured. There shouldn't be healing potions among his luggage, should there? Will he go with him? Hiroto said he would go well. Then the three of them were about to descend into this crevice, but they were called by the assistant leader and asked them to stop. He told them that they had made a roll call after a brawl and missed one neighbor. The guy said that he hadn't seen Yamaguchi anywhere. Hiroto asked that he was one of their party, didn't he? The leader's assistant explained that Yamaguchi had a stab wound. If they don't find him soon, he may die. The guy thought about it and asked what maybe then they should split up in order to find everyone as soon as possible. He turned to Hiroto and said that he would go with him to look for the one who fell into the crevice, and Murano would go to look for the missing Yamaguchi. Okay, Murano said she was coming. The guy said that as soon as they rescue the fallen, they will join the search for the missing. Hiroto and Murano exchanged glances. Murano smiled at him, letting him know that everything would be fine. After the discussion, they divided into two groups. Hiroto was surrounded by all these guys. He stopped and asked what and how to understand it. Their leader came forward and said that last time he noticed he had a very interesting sword. Hiroto thought that Tsuyako Kyujo was currently ranked first in the S-rank hunter rankings. When she was still a hunter in the rank, she had exactly the same sword. Also this spatial storage skill. Had he seen it all? The leader said that she could destroy an entire building with one blow. When he first saw it, he could not recover for a long time. Hiroto said that it's quite natural for S-rank talents. What's the big deal? The leader said that didn't he know? She rose to the top of the world when she was no more than 20 years old. She appeared out of nowhere about 10 years ago, and at the same time, her talent was evaluated by S classes. And so far, only a few talents have received the S rank in the association. But aren't they just a bunch of pathetic old men? Hiro thought that if his genocide and the weapons of that S-rank huntress are identical, then now he can say with confidence that only S-rank talents see the application system. He said that an entire building was destroyed by one blow. Her sword must have been reinforced with human blood. Hiroto dropped his backpack and asked, so what does his story have to do with this situation? His people began to gather around the leader and were preparing, apparently, for battle. The leader of the abomination grinned and said that they would kill him and take the sword. In the old games, this happened to the players all the time. That's what it all means. Hiroto wasn't scared at all. He asked if they would kill and rob, wouldn't they? And how many people have they killed because of their greed? The leader said that who already knows. After 20, they stopped counting. Hiroto asked what they wanted to do with Murano. The leader's assistant came forward, and I told him that, apparently, he still wouldn't calm down. To begin with, he makes a good mockery of her. He is afraid that if someone tries it before him, the taste will not be the same. Hiroto was furious. He thought Murano was a martial artist, even though she has skills that can instantly kill, but her level and status are still very low. He needs to hurry up. He took out his sword again and said that it seemed that the developers of this application were doing everything possible to make him start killing. The leader did not understand him and asked, what is the application? Then someone shouted for them to look, because this sword really appeared out of nowhere. Hiroto said he would kill to survive. If he needs to kill them in order to strengthen his weapon, then he will do it. He is not the Lord God and the merciless Buddha. People like them will be more useful dead, so he's not going to hold back. Hearing this, his men started laughing. Someone asked if he wouldn't hold back, and he's really very funny. This low-grade porter is asking to be killed. Well, okay, they won't talk to him either. Then at some point Hiroto disappeared, and, appearing next to one of the people, this leader wounded him with his sword. Now they were all scared. Someone said that this could not be. Doesn't he have an F-rank talent? Its maximum level should be very small. Hiroto said they thought he was asking for death, and he thought he had a great sword. And I asked them if they would have any more questions. After that, with one swing of his sword, he cut in half one of the swords of the leader's men. And then he killed one of them. Stopping, he asked, "Well, how is it? Is he still not dangerous?" For them, here one visible, the bravest, said that if you get a good sword from him at least 10 times, he is still F rank. You just need to hit it, and it will die. At that moment, Hiroto had already killed this guy. Hiroto said he was good at dodging, but what a pity. He's still within his reach. He looked at the leader and the guy who had lunch with him and Murano, and told them that only they were left. Their leader was shaking all over with fear. Hiroto stepped on them and said he didn't take him seriously, only because he is F rank, and it was just a fatal mistake. Hiroto started killing the rest of his people. The leader couldn't do anything about it, as he was very cowardly. Senseless violence is taking equipment from the weak and trapping the strong. Coercion and senseless violence. That's what they always do, that's their way of life. And now they will feel all the pain that the people they killed experienced. Senseless violence and all-consuming fear. Hiroto approached their leader and swung his sword. The leader saw it and asked to save him. Hiroto did not listen to him and thought that what he said. At this moment, it exactly coincided with the words of the people who became his victims. Hiroto then wounded him. The guy who lured him here was backing away. Hiroto turned to him and asked him what he would do. The guy began to justify himself and said that they forced him to do it. Hiroto looked at him a little more, then turned away and said that it was clear, and he thought that he needed to find Murano as soon as possible. While Hiroto was distracted, this guy decided to mess with him. He took out a bottle and opened it. He said it was a mixture of poisons from various dungeon monsters. This is his special invention. After that, he decided to pour this potion on Hiroto, but Hiroto dodged. The guy was terrified. He asked if he really dodged without even turning around. Hiroto was still standing with his back to him and told him that he thought that at least he was normal here. He turned to him and added that he was even sorry. Then he cut off this guy's hand. The leader was still conscious. Seeing this, he rushed to the leak. The rest of his people, who saw this, also got to their feet and asked the leader to wait. But then they were surrounded by a snake. A huge snake. This snake devoured their leader. One of his people asked where the cave serpent came from here. This guy said that that server was also abnormal. Why do anomalies in the dungeons occur more and more often? And to begin with, there has already been one incident in this dungeon. And more. He looked at Hiroto and thought, what's wrong with this guy? At that moment, the cave serpent swung its tail and crushed the remaining 2 people. After that, the system sent notifications to Hiroto. In this notification it was written that the murder of people was recorded. His genocide has evolved. The special skill of this sword called Godslayer has reached level 2. A new sword skill called Kill Alley has also been obtained. Hiroto thought that the system counted these murders to him, didn't it? Anyway, he's in a hurry. Hiroto quickly dealt with this cave snake and ran to Murano's aid. He was very worried about her, which is why he was in a hurry very much. He immediately climbed up the slope and raced on. But when he arrived at the place, he realized that Murano was fine. She's already dealt with that guy. Murano beat him and tied him up. Hiroto exhaled and thought that she seemed to be fine. He approached her and asked what had happened here. Murano said that this guy suddenly attacked her. Hiroto told her that he was very glad that she was not hurt either. Murano started up and asked if he had been attacked too. Hiroto said yes, but he rebuffed them, but some still managed to run away. But those who did not have time to escape were devoured by a cave snake. Murano asked, what is a cave serpent? First there was Cerberus, and now this. How do you not look at it? Are there too many incidents in the dungeons lately? Hiroto remembered Murakami Shingo's words. When Hiroto met this man in the dungeon, he told him not to misunderstand him. But it was better to refrain from conquering the dungeons for now. After all, the case smells fried. Hiroto said they were the reason. No, it would be more correct to say that all this is connected with the application of the Demon Lord. Murano asked what then? How can I tell them about what happened? Would they just say that he had defeated the cave serpent? After all, if they find out about it, won't they raise a stir? Hiroto said it was simple. He planned to deviate from the party a little later, but come what may. Murano asked, what will happen? What will happen? Hiroto told her that they were melee fighters. Which of them would find it strange that 1 or 2 porters were missing? He held out his hand to her and told her that it was time for them to go. Together, they will continue on their way to life. Murano took his hand and said yes. Meanwhile, the dungeon that formed in the building of the now defunct Artemis Hunter Academy. Now this area was well guarded. No one could enter this dungeon without special permission. And Mr. Tomovo arrived there, turning to the inspectors of the Hunters Association. He said that he was looking they were already bravely serving today. One of the inspectors greeted him. Mr. Tomova walked closer to this dungeon and broke all the fences along the way. He was approached by two men with weapons, who were inspectors of the Hunters Association, and one of them told Mr. Tomova that entering the dungeon without permission is strictly prohibited. Mr. Tomova, turning around and looking at them, asked, "What is even a hunter of a rank?" The inspectors of the Hunters Association told him that the rules also apply to a rank hunters. Mr. Tomova scratched his head and said to fuck this bureaucracy. The dungeon can't be conquered by surveillance alone. One of the inspectors told him that no matter how you look at it, but rules are rules. They will have problems if they don't follow the instructions. Mr. Tomova didn't put up with it anymore. He used his force to kill one of these inspectors, taking off his head. After that, Mr. Tomova said that he understood them perfectly. No one wants to get a cap for breaking the rules, but they also need to understand it. If he doesn't get inside and swat a couple of assholes, then he will already have problems. But first you need to come up with an excuse for all this mess. He thought for a moment. Then it dawned on him, and Mr. Tomova said he had a great idea. That's exactly what they will do. He will say that an unusual monster was spotted in the dungeon. He managed to get outside and, as a result, everyone outside and inside the dungeon tragically died, and there were no witnesses left. It will be problematic if they start an investigation. Therefore, it is necessary to demolish the dungeon at the same time. One of the inspectors was very scared and asked him if he was crazy. Kill every single one. Mr. Tomova interrupted him and said that he was here on business, and they were just unlucky to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He has to accept it. The man said that, but that's crazy. Mr. Tomova asked, "What is madness?" He'll take it as a compliment. The man told him that there was a rank hunter inside. He can't handle him that easily. Mr. Tomova asked that there was only one person of a rank. He has long been asked to be equal to S rank. He pointed to his necklace and said that this was the power of this artifact. Will the pitiful a rank be able to resist him? He came close to this inspector and grabbed him by the head with one of his hands. After that, Mr. Tomova said that, well, now it's time for them to start their party. And he started killing all the witnesses.